Hello, everybody. How are we today? Welcome to this edition of V Radio. Let me check out something here. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping from the previous stream, and mostly just because there were some things that were left unresolved. And then after that, I'm not going to be in the Kevin Glowicki business anymore. But there was some stuff that we talked about before that will be relevant to like what we were talking about last time. So, welcome to this stream. And today, the main topic will be an expose on the grift of Black Lives Matter, specifically how an enormous amount of money is being made by the select few at the top. Kind of like what they said in Animal Farm, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And I think that'll be clear. I want to say hello to everybody on Twitch and on YouTube. And I'm also currently broadcasting to Facebook as well. Rumble should automatically get this stream afterwards. If you haven't already, please consider visiting me on v-radio.us. There you can join my various social media platforms, including Telegram, Discord, Facebook. There's a Fans of V Radio Facebook group. Just basically to be ways to be sure that you actually get your notification that I'm live. Because otherwise, there's really no way to know if you will. Okay, so first order of business today is the Kenosha County Eye actually got their hands on the video footage of the MSNBC person who got pulled over trying to tail the jury. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up here in a moment. And that's going to be the first thing we check out today. Welcome, everybody. Just looking at the people in here. Now I'm checking out the chat again. Okay, one sec. We're now pausing for station identification. You're listening to V Radio. More thing. Okay. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. I just wanted to get some things set up. And please share the stream. And if you have not already, please click the like button or whatever the equivalent is over on Twitch. And let's take a look. Please pause for station identification. Here we go. All right. So again, this video was captured, or rather put together by the Kenosha County Eye. That's Kevin Matheson. You guys may remember him being on my stream last night and being on some of my previous streams. And this is the official video of them pulling over the MSNBC dipshit who was following the jury bus in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. This is what got MSNBC banned. Let's have a look.
Are you from Wisconsin, sir?
No.
Huh?
No.
Where you from?
Atlanta.
Atlanta? Okay. All right.
I mean, Dunwoody's my official, but I flew up from Atlanta.
You flew up. What's significance of you being here?
I work for NBC.
For NBC?
Yeah.
Okay. You're a reporter?
Producer.
Producer? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Media?
Yeah.
Why would you call it a media?
I don't know. So were you following a vehicle?
I was trying to see, I was being called by New York going, maybe these are the people you need to follow, but I don't know. I was trying to.
You trying to what?
Just do what they told me to do.
New York told you to follow a vehicle?
Yes.
Your offices in New York or what?
That's right.
How did they know about this vehicle?
I mean, it was discreet. I wasn't like, talk to anybody. Just trying to find a location. That's all.
So, he was told to follow somebody. He's told to follow this vehicle from his offices in New York.
What office in New York?
It's the NBC office in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the person who called you and told you to do this?
Yeah.
You want to give me his information real quick?
You want me to call?
Sure.
So we got news media telling them to follow unmarked vehicles.
That's what it sounds like.
Hey, law enforcement wants to talk to you.
Is this cringe or what?
This is Officer Jones, Kenosha Police. We're trying to figure out what's going on here. Why you have a reporter or a producer following vehicles out here? Hold on. I'm gonna put you on speakerphone because you're connected to his car. Now, can you go again?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Hi, officer. My name is Irene. I'm a booking producer with NBC News. We were just trying to respectfully, just trying to see if it's possible to find any leads about the case, and so we were just keeping our distance, just to see like where people involved in the trial are positioned. By no means were we trying to get in contact with any of the jury members or whoever's in the car. We just were trying to see like where where key players in the trial may be at.
So
if you want, I can just offer this up. Once the verdict comes, like these are the letters that the clerk is going to be giving to them. So this.
Hold on a second.
Just trying to.
We have hard ID on the individual. Apparently, he's a producer with NBC. Currently on the phone with his offices in New York, who advised him to follow a vehicle in reference to the case. Ten four. Real 651 494. You said it was a red light violation. Ten four. Okay. All right. So, real quick, how you advised him to follow? Like any vehicle? Did you know which vehicle he was following?
We just had our people positioned in different areas of the courthouse to see if anyone would be able to in different areas, and so we were just like following different.
Well, we're gonna ask you guys to not do that.
This sounds like a 9-year-old kid who got caught by their parents going into like the cookie jar or something, and now they're trying to explain themselves. I'm sorry. I had to stop it for a moment.
All right, that's a concern here. This is huge. We can't afford anything crazy happening, putting people in dangerous positions. This individual violated some traffic laws here doing this. So we're going to ask you guys to refrain from doing that.
Got it. Understood. Thank you so much. We're very sorry.
I'm very sorry.
Go ahead, 494.
They said they're very sorry, like their BP after an oil spill.
Do you have any ties to this community, sir?
I love this community. I've covered a lot of golf, Whistling Straits. Not the Kenosha community itself. No, sir.
Negative. You do not have any ties here. He's from out of state.
I mean, friends.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
I apologize.
Irene, what's your position?
Booking producer.
booking producer.
So that's the end of that. I want to thank the Kenosha County Eye for getting their hands on that. I'm not going to be playing Robert Greenwald today. Anyway, so yeah, that was pretty cringe. Actually, ridiculously cringe in my opinion. We're going to be moving on now to the next issue of business before we get into our main stream today, which is again just house cleaning from the previous stream. There was a discussion yesterday that CJ TV, who's a streamer, was going to be getting a that was what we assumed anyway. Kevin Glowicki had somebody who got a restraining order against him, and nobody knew who it was. Kenosha County Eye also got their hands on that information, and I guess it's probably gone around enough now. But it's funny is when I talked to CJTV about it briefly, he was like, "What? How do they know already?" And I was like, "Well, Kenosha County Eye is on top of their business, man." So, in any case, let me pull that up. You're listening to V Radio. All right, so let's have a look. As of the Kenosha County Eye, popular social media streamer obtains temporary restraining order against violent Kenosha felon. So this confirmed that it was in fact CJTV who got the restraining order against Kevin Glowicki, also known as Never Stop Voices. So I'm not going to read this whole article, but you guys can check out Kenosha County Eye's channel and their website. If you guys need the link to that, I can show you later. But this confirms that this is exactly who it was, which is kind of what we expected, but we were not for sure. At least I expected. I think Matheson might have believed it was a woman or something, but it wasn't. So in any case, I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of stuff in regards to this anymore. I've kind of like washed my hands of it, but I do want to go ahead and show what the incident was about that led to him getting this restraining order in the first place. And after that, I don't expect to be talking about Kevin Glowicki probably ever again, but because it was relevant to what we were discussing last night, I figured I'd follow up. So let me go ahead and pull that up. So here's the clip this is from CJ's stream specifically, where the altercation that led to this restraining order happened.
You fucking shove at me one more time. Give me some space, bro. You shove at me one more time, trying to knock me down, motherfucker. I will make sure you're asking space. It's fucking proud. Don't touch me. Do not fucking put your fucking body in me.
Why are you touching me right now?
Do not put your fucking body into me.
Why are you touching me?
Now's not the time for you.
Why are you touching me?
It's not the time for it.
You need to focus your attention on something else.
Now's not the time for this shit, Jack. Do not put your fucking body
you need to
into me.
stop touching me. I'll ask you twice. That's the last time I'm going to tell you.
Hell yeah. You're gonna scream self-defense.
Until you die from freedom.
Put your fucking body in me.
And we're going to show we got respect today for all of us and all the family. No justice!
Did you hear him say, "Are you going to scream self-defense?" Once again, mocking the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. And of course, more of those signs that were all over Kenosha with Anthony Huber and Rosenbaum on them. And I just can't wrap my head around that at all. So before we get into my main stream today, I want to give an opportunity for anybody commenting. Was he threatening me? No, not meaningfully. I mean, I don't really think that's what's going on. After I reported on this is probably going to be the last I talk about him. I mean, the funny thing is after he did his weird stream, that I kind of commented on. Like I restreamed some of it. What happened was he then took it down and then started another stream. And in it, he claimed we were copyright cowards. Like he claimed that his stream had been taken down by copyright claim, but I never copyright claimed him. And someone else said, no, it says that it's listed as private. So he just took his stream down because he realized it wasn't working so hot. And then he left it at that. Matheson wants to debate him on my stream. That is probably the last involvement I would ever possibly have, but that would be more about my devotion to being a debate moderator, something I take very seriously, that I'm very big and very impartial and very fair about, because I feel it's really important that people can have good discourse and actually accomplish something when they're arguments. But regardless, checking stuff out here in the stream just to be sure if there's any questions about what I've shown so far. It doesn't look like it. Nope. Okay. Anyway, if you guys are on YouTube, please smash the like button. And otherwise, I don't know what you do over on Twitch, but Tam will, direct you to what to do. Tam is my Twitch girl. Alrighty. Now, moving right along into our actual topic for the day is the Black Lives Matter expose on the BLM cash enterprise. There's lots of dollar signs. All right. So I gathered up a lot of different articles to try to put together this presentation, and I decided to do it in a live stream fashion as opposed to putting together like a documentary style video. So I don't know what it is. I'm still kind of arguing back and forth about which format is better. I know I can certainly be more precise and there'll be less gaps in the action if I do it as a documentary, but I don't know how many of you guys actually watch all of them. So in any case, I do know my streamers tend to like to hang around and watch stuff, so that's where we're at. Let me go ahead and pull up the first article specifically on this topic. Alrighty. All right. Share screen. All right. Why are these out of order? Here we go. So first of all, we need to talk about the history of Black Lives Matter itself in order to really get a grasp on this situation. These are the three founders of Black Lives Matter, and every one of them is insanely wealthy. And we're going to go over just how wealthy here in a moment. So we're looking at Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi. I've actually never seen Opal Tometi talk. I've never seen her at any presentations or anything. But you hear the most from Patrisse Cullors. She's actually recently resigned from the organization due to all of the controversy about her spending. And then Garza, she goes more under the radar from what I've seen. A lot of the stuff that she talks about is more about the communist aspect of things. She's a bit more brazen about it. But these are the three people who got it all started. And we're going to look at, first of all, on how they're all doing financially as a consequence of Black Lives Matter. Now, I want to be clear. It's not that I believe that they're taking the donations and spending them. I don't believe that's what's going on. I think that what is going on is that the three of them get speaking engagement fees, and they also get book deals and stuff like that. And that's largely where they made their money. And we're going to look also at the fact that the Black Lives Matter organization itself is kind of getting sick of them. And we're going to discuss why. So first of all, this is just them, and it gives you the idea, and I wanted to make clear that that's who they were. But let's take a look first at the one who's most notorious for this and take it from there. All right, we're going to start with Patrisse Cullors. Patrisse Cullors is, again, as I said, kind of the most vocal and most, I guess, notorious. But let's take a look. Patrice Clan Colors net worth. How rich is the activist actually? And if you look down here, it says her net worth is about $2 million. Now, that I don't think includes the fact that she just purchased like 4 homes that are all like $500,000 a piece, and then like I guess one of them was like worth $1,004,400. So she's made an insane amount of money. And again, like this isn't, these are like, this is entrepreneur, so this is just about rich people in general. It's not specifically a activist website or anything, but it's well known already that she makes an insane amount of money. And so once again, millionaire. Let's take a look at the next one in line. Okay, Opal Tomei, $4 million net worth, and she's the one I've seen the least of. But I mean, this is her, and she's one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, and her net worth currently is $4 million, because according to this, like statistics that are offered right now, doing pretty well for herself. Now we're going to move on. Alicia Garza. Alicia Garza's net worth is $1 to $3 million. Again, doing really well for herself. $1 to $3 million. Doing pretty well. Sorry about that. I had to mute for a second. So all 3 of these women did pretty darn well, considering, what's going on. And they've been called out on it a bit. So I'm going to show you guys some videos of Patrice Cullors in particular kind of squirming in her chair to discuss the fact that she has all this money. Yet, for some reason, Black Lives Matter, the organization, I guess, is sitting on about $60 million that they're not doing anything with. Excuse me. And if you guys have listened to my interview with Pastor Corey Brooks, he's actually trying to do real work. And, his organization that tries to get kids jobs, tries to keep them in school, tries to get them out of gangs, is constantly struggling. And so instead, we're stuck with this situation that we have now. And honestly, I just, it's an obvious grift, like of the highest order. Let's take a look at her being confronted a little bit on her spending.
Absolutely. So I want to pivot to the reason why you're here. In the last few weeks, there have been stories that have become very prominent in the national media around you, and particularly around issues of spending, issues of income. Specifically, there were 2 stories that came out that talked about you purchasing homes. You reportedly purchased 4 homes, and we're looking even at another home. I believe in the Bahamas. There were conversations about how you spend money. And the stories also had a lot of innuendo about the source, the relationship between your money and your spending, and questions around BLM, global movements, finances. So the first thing I want to do is talk about what's true that has been said and what has been untrue.
I want to start, thank you, Mark. I want to just start by saying something that's really important for people to hear. And that's, I have never taken a salary from the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. And that's important because what the right-wing media is trying to say is the donations that people gave to Black Lives Matter went towards my spending. And that is categorically untrue and incredibly dangerous.
So you haven't taken a salary. So your income that you use to make whatever purchases you've made have come from outside income. You've mentioned on your IG, and other people have talked about speeches, studio deals, book deals for your book when they call you a terrorist. Your income has not come from working directly with BLM, GM.
That's correct. Yeah, I'm a college professor, first of all. I also am a TV producer, and I have had 2 book deals. My first book that came out was a New York Times bestseller. And I also have had a YouTube deal. And so much of all of my income comes directly from the work that I do. But I also want to say something, Mark, that feels really important. Organizers should get paid for the work that they do. They should get paid a living wage. And the fact that the right-wing media is trying to create hysteria around my spending is frankly racist and sexist. And also, I want to name that many of us who...
Wait a second. How is that racist and sexist? To point out that you bought 4 homes that are valued at like more than most of the people you claim to represent will probably ever make in their entire lives? That's racist and sexist? How the hell does that have anything to do with anybody's race or sex? That's just ridiculous. She's just throwing out attacks for the hell of it because, again, it's, the shotgun shell of oppression, throw everything and see what sticks. Anyway.
End up investing in homes in the Black community, often invest in homes to take care of their family. So homes that I bought directly support the people that I love and that I care about. I'm not renting them out in some Airbnb operation. And you could speak to so many other Black people and Black women particularly that take care of their families, take care of their loved ones, especially when they're in a position to.
So the reason that she's a Marxist that is, quote unquote, taking care of her families at the speed of $500,000 homes per family member is that, you can speak to other Black girls. They take care of their family. Meanwhile, the people, again, that she claims to represent are in ridiculous poverty. And she makes enormous amounts of money on that very fact. So the whole notion, basically everything she just said here keeps coming back to how people justify it to themselves. After you get to a certain amount of money, it gets kind of dangerous. But even in a communist system, this is, again, exactly what was being pointed out in Animal Farm, when eventually the pigs changed the rules when nobody looks to all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. She's justified to herself that she's leaving the rest of her people that she's supposedly doing all of this for in total poverty and squalor. Well, she also, where she bought her house is also in a big, affluent, mostly white neighborhood. So apparently she might know a thing or two about why she did that. In any case, let's continue for a little bit anyway.
That's an important point because, again, when we look at the New York Post cover, the first thing they say is that you went on a spending binge, right? Which is itself a kind of coded language. They say that you have these homes in California, there's a home in Atlanta, and that you were considering a home in a neighborhood where Tiger Woods was looking, or some other famous celebrity. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying the 4 homes are true. It's true that you have those homes, but you're using them to support other family and people you care about.
That's exactly right. And I just want to make it really clear. I haven't been to the Bahamas since I was 15 years old on a dance trip when I danced on the big red boat. So I don't know where that lie came from.
There's also a question, because you're right. The right-wing media has made certain critiques of you that you're spending and you're buying. And there's an argument to be made that this is absolutely about misogynoir. They don't want Black women to have anything. There's also a critique, though, from the left that would say, if you are a trained Marxist, if we're talking about a certain kind of radical politic, that extravagant homes of any sort or multiple properties of any sort is itself contradictory to the ideology that you hold. And so it's not about having money per se, but that it's about, or about property per se, but it's about there being a potential contradiction between your expressed politics and your lived practice.
Sure. And I think that is a critique that is wanting. And I say that because the way that I live my life is in direct support to Black people, including my Black family members, first and foremost. And for so many Black folks who are able to invest in themselves and their community, they choose to invest in their family. And that's what I've chosen to do. I have a child, I have a brother that has severe mental illness that I take care of. I support my mother, and I support many other family members of mine. And so I see my money as not my own. I see it as my family's money as well. And I want to also speak to Black Lives Matter and the money that we didn't necessarily raise, money that was given to us last summer. Mark, the minute we started to receive funding, I looked at my team and I said, we have to get these dollars out the door. Now that Black Lives Matter has money, we have to be a grant making body as well as a think tank, act tank, and an amplifier. And so, so much of the work that BLM specifically has done has been reinvesting into Black communities. We launched a survival fund where we gave nearly $3 million to 1,000 Black folks across the country.
Now, she's at this point in damage control mode, and I basically have gotten what I wanted out of this video. But you see what I'm saying is that basically her deflection is to say, well, I have to take care of my family. You know, as if her family couldn't do okay in $100,000 homes. I could do okay in a $100,000 home. I don't think I would ever spend $500,000 on a home. It's just ridiculous. And in the meantime, the poor people that she claims to represent, you know, not to mention the poor people who probably donated, are living in horrible conditions. So this is just ridiculous. It makes no freaking sense. Just a deflection. In any case, thank you, Mary Todd, for your excellent stuff. I want to go back here and look in the chat. Think of how many T-shirts they sold. Where are her homes? I believe there's. You can find that information online. I didn't focus too much on that, but it is available. So, here's what Tam had to say. Same thing happened to Hassan. Got big on Twitch promoting socialism, Marxism, and then bought a $3 million house in LA. Yep. So let me go ahead and move on to the next one. You know, and once again, guys, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, hit the heart, whatever it is you're supposed to do on the platform you're listening on. Thanks for checking out V Radio. So moving on to the next video. Again, guys, it's really just about understanding that there was a lot of money being made here, and activism is big money. As I pointed out at the end of my video, the truth about police shootings, I brought up the fact that there's a motive to continue to get us, you know, hyped up and fighting each other over the race issue. And that's, you know, really what is that, unfortunately, the core of all this nonsense. And it's going on in such a way that you can't really dare call out, because if you do, you know, then obviously you're racist and sexist. Somehow it's racist and sexist to bring up that somebody who supposedly advocates for the poor is buying $500,000 homes for her multiple family members, as she put it anyway. All right, so moving on. Thanks for tuning in to V Radio. If this is your first time checking out V Radio, you can check out my archives. You can also go to v-radio.us. So, sorry about that, guys. Why is this open in multiple places? There we go. You check out chat while I'm doing this. Yeah, one of those homes would take a minimum wage worker just 25 years just to earn that kind of money. I concur. So it's a little redonkulous, honestly. So moving on to another grifter in this instance, we're going to talk a little bit about Sean King. Actually, before we do that, we're going to discuss this. This has to do with Black Lives Matter specifically. And this woman goes off, and she's very articulate.
In 2016, 18-year-old Richard Risher was fatally shot by officers with the Los Angeles Police Department. Richard's mother, Lisa Simpson, has been fighting for justice ever since. She became an outspoken and critical voice as a mother of the movement, a group of Black women who have lost their children as a result of police actions. Lisa Simpson joins me now. Ms. Simpson, thank you for joining me. Welcome to the show. You recently released a statement with Samaria Rice, the mother of Tamir Rice, and in it, you had some strong words for the activist community. Can you tell me a little bit more about that statement and what compelled you to issue it in the first place?
Well, in 2016, when I lost my 18-year-old son in Los Angeles Police Department, I met Black Lives Matter by accident with my son March. Melina Abdullah was running the LA chapter. They kicked me out the encampment, said I made them look like terrorists. 2 years after they kicked me out the encampment, I found out that they had reciprocated money in the name of my son. I tried to talk to the lady. I had a Zoom with her like 4 months ago. She hung up the phone on me. I mean, it's just sad that they came into this fight with the wrong intentions and took advantage of us mothers and fathers because we were vulnerable, because the police had killed our children. And I want them out the fight, because if you came in here with the wrong intentions, you can't fix it when you already wrong. And it's just sad that Patrice Cullors will get on all these newscasts and fabricate stories about they easy to contact. And I've been trying to get in contact with them for 5 years. I'm 52 years old, sir. I ain't never seen Patrice Cullors in Los Angeles ever in my life. And this is where I was born and raised at. And then to find out she from the Valley, but you're not doing nothing for the community in Los Angeles. You the head of Black Lives Matter Global Network, and Melina Abdullah is your tail. I don't understand how you got $1 million movie deal, how she got a contract with Levi's. I mean, you buying homes and you say you buying them for your family, but your family is still alive, but our children are dead. They never coming back. And everybody is attacking me, and I'm a mother because I'm telling the truth. I'm not lying on these people. This wasn't a fake video. This was the truth. Me, Melina Abdullah, Jill Stein, and Yane from Philly Black Lives Matter was on an interview downtown Los Angeles at the 49th encampment when Jill Stein supposedly came to Los Angeles to stand in solidarity with me with the death of my kid. And Melina and them would sit up there and put all these lies out on about me, talking about I'm lying, I got mental health issues. Don't do that. Tell the truth. You made a mistake. Be a woman and say, look, I made a mistake. How can we fix this?
So
It's past. How can we
I
fix
just want to
it?
clarify.
Because I want you to get that extra large limo and get on up out our fight, because you done more harm than good. And it's sad that I'm a mother that lost my 18-year-old son that took 35 shots out of 70. And y'all would have a town hall meeting on me in Los Angeles, and you're a professor, and you got men on there talking about what they gonna do to people. Like, y'all are very violent. Y'all are a very violent organization, and you say y'all not charity, but y'all getting all these donations, and where's the money going? You say you made 191,000 Patrice Cullors in 2019. Where do you work at, sweetie? What company do you work for that you made 191,000?
So
I do math.
Simpson, let me pause you just for a second, just so that we can get some clarity for the audience. I just want to pause you for a minute, just so the audience can get some clarity on what we're talking about. So, and of course, Patrice Cullors, one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter, was here on Black News Tonight last week for an exclusive interview, and we talked to her. You all can check that out on the web. There's two pieces here that I'm hearing from you so far. One is the lack of financial support that you feel like you've gotten from the movement. And you're saying Black Lives Matter, Global Network Foundation in particular, but it sounds like from your letter, there are other forces who you feel like aren't giving you proper support, both financial and otherwise. And then you're also saying that you're being mischaracterized by the people in the movement, by people in the movement. So I want to start with the money side first, because I do want to unpack this just a little bit. We talked a little bit about Patrice Cullors' personal wealth. I'm sure I suspect you're not asking her to give you her own money, but you're saying that the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation has money, and that as a mother of the movement, you should be able to get some of it. What would be fair to you? What would be a fair amount of money to receive? What would be the proper level of support? What would you need to feel like you've been treated properly?
You want me to keep it honest with you, or you want me to fabricate a story?
I want honest.
Okay, honestly, it's bigger than the money, sir. It's about the principle. It's about how you came into this fight, and my 18-year-old son was slaughtered by LAPD, and they slandered and defamated my character to all walks of life that would listen to him. And it's just sad that I'm a mother and I have to fight an entity that knew that they came into this fight with the wrong intentions. They never came in here for the fight of the death of our children. They had a hidden agenda. And they can't be mad at me because I was woke and I wasn't asleep and I found out how they was moving, and the way they was moving, it wasn't right. This is why we can't get no justice. Black Lives Matter have made this into a money game. Everybody is about money. It's bigger than the money, sir. When they got statues in the Constitution that states that they can kill us in a cruel and unusual fashion with no due process to blacks and blacks only. I got a problem with that as a black mother, because I still got 2 black sons. So Black Lives Matter gonna come in my fight and shuck and jive and reciprocate benefits and disrespect all these mothers and fathers that lost their children? And that's fair to the people? No, they need to get out this fight and find them something else to do. That is the solution and the only solution.
So for you, the idea is that these folk who you say have the wrong intention to leave the movement, are there other things that you need to be whole? And not just from BLM. In the statement from you and Samari Rice, you also implicated other figures, other fairly prominent figures in the movement for Black lives and activists more broadly. Are there other things that you need in order to be?
You talk about Tamika Mallory, right?
You mentioned Tamika Mallory. You mentioned Benjamin Crump. Yeah, you mentioned Tamika Mallory. You mentioned Benjamin Crump. You mentioned a few people.
And guess why I mentioned them, sir? Because the same thing, like Tamika Mallory, she tried to tell me she'd been an activist for 25 years. But I just found out about this lady like a couple years ago. So where was you at 23 years ago? You feel me? Because see, my son been dead for 5 years, and I'm tired of all these activists that's acting like they doing, putting their boots on the ground. There's no way that Tamika Mallory boots can be on the ground when she got on $800 pair of Balenciagos on her feet. She ain't trying to get them shoes messed up. Benjamin Crump don't have no law experience where he can just travel up and down the globe taking all these cases. When he got that $27 million for George Floyd's family before this case was over, he got up on TV and said, "This is how you get justice." It's bigger than the money. This clown is going up and down the coast, snatching these cases. These families ain't getting no justice. They're getting monetary benefits. But guess what? At the end of the day, when the money is gone, you still got your dead loved one that you hurting behind. So it's bigger than the money with me, sir. I want some real people that got a heart, that got a mind and a body and a soul that really care, that say, dang, this lady's son got shot 35 times. Let's get in contact with her, because I still ain't been in the court yet.
Were there any people in the movement who did offer that for you? Were there people, movements, organizations who were supportive, who stood tall with you, who showed solidarity,
Yes.
who didn't make you feel abandoned or exploited? If so, who?
Fred C. Hampton, the Black Panther Cubs of Chicago, Cop Watching, BJ Trotter of Long Beach, Together We Stand up north. When my son got killed, these are the people that's been standing down with me, been rocking with me for 5 years. The mothers and fathers that I met in this fight in the 5 years, they've been standing and rocking with me. You know, even through all the negativity that Black Lives Matter tried to spew out their mouth about me. I went down there to ask Melina to tell me in my face that I was lying about the video, and I dropped the F-bomb, and they whole like congregation surrounded me. One of the girls tried to fight me. I had deep scratches all over my arm. He was calling me fools all out there. You know, it's just funny that they say they out here for the people, but I'm a black woman, and my son was a black kids, so his life don't matter. They don't say my son's name in Los Angeles. You feel me? They talk negative about me to everybody. I was in a congressman office last year that was running against Maxine Waters, and one of their core members called the Bishop of West Angeles, the assistant bishop for 14 years, and he asked them did they have help families because I was homeless at the time. And they was like, yeah. He said, well, I know a family. Can you help her? He said, what's her name? He said, Lisa Simpson. He said, oh, I know her very, very, very well. And don't mess with her because she's trying to exploit Black Lives Matter for money. That man didn't even know I was sitting right there when he was just slandering and defamating my character like that. And I didn't even know the man. So it's like, Melina, you study talking bad about
I have a question for you, and we have to run obviously for a commercial break. But what are you okay with a process of restoration? In other words, if we got the people involved, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's some of the other organizers around the country, would you be willing to sit down, cameras off, behind the scenes, and have a conversation to figure out how we could restore this, how we could repair the damage that's been done, how you all could come together as a community and build something? Because I'm hearing people say they want that. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But the question is, would you be willing to be part of that conversation?
I would be willing to be part of that, but we were supposed to have a meeting with Tamika Mallory, Melina Abdullah, Patrice Cullors on the 13th of April, and none of them showed up. None of them answered the emails or none of that. So, I'm tired of the shucking and jiving. I'm a real person. Stop talking about me and talk to me, because I'll talk back and I will listen. But they don't want to talk to me because, to keep it 100 with you, I'm the only one that got proof that Black Lives Matter did me wrong. Mike Brown ain't got no video of them saying that they raised money for Mike Brown Jr. Samir Rice ain't got no video that said they raised money for Tamir Rice. But I got an actual video with Melina Abdullah asking for $5,000, $10,000 or $5,000 will do for Brother Richie, because Brother Richie need to be buried. But Brother Richie was already buried and dead in the wall 19 days before I did the interview. So how is it a lie? Show me a receipt that I'm lying, because I got receipts that lady got a lot of money.
So this is a conversation that obviously can't end here. I hear you calling for justice, you calling for accountability, and we have to make sure that happens here at Black News Tonight. Of course, we'll be bringing on other folk to keep this conversation going because we want to figure out how this happened. But at the core of it, Ms. Simpson, my heart goes out to you and your family for the loss of your son, and we're sending you love and prayers and anything we can do.
Short of sending her money, right? So again, the grift continues. Now we're going to talk about another grifter in the Black Lives Matter world. And while he's not one of the founders, he's definitely somebody who came into a lot of controversy because he was fundraising. One of the biggest pieces of controversy about him is whether or not he's actually black. His name is Shaun King. And Shaun King, sometimes referred to as Talcum X because people believe he's actually pretending to be black. His net worth is $3 million. And he's doing pretty well for himself. And he got himself into some trouble because he started fundraising for Tamir Rice's son. And they had never really spoken. The controversy was that he had done an episode of his podcast saying that he had talked to her, and she confronted him on Twitter, which literally resulted in him deleting his Twitter account. And I don't know if he ever came back, but I know he was gone. And he claimed it was because he was going to go spend time with his wife or something. But what really happened is Twitter started dragging him really freaking hard. And so Shaun King got into it with, as I said, Tamir Rice's mother, and I'm going to go to a website specifically that kind of details that. Unfortunately, I don't have as many clips, although where I'm taking you guys, you'll be able to see, some clips of some of the online conversation, which is pretty juicy. Oh, I hope you guys are enjoying this. I know this is a little more low key than my normal high pressure streams or whatever, but this is information that I wanted to get out there because I didn't think everybody really put it into context just how much money these people were making. It's honestly just insane, like how well these people are doing, and let me take a look. Oh, I see Agro Vixen is here. Yay. Hi there. Joiner's Gat. Hello there, Gat. Every time I learn something new about the USA. Well, I'm happy to be part of your education here on V Radio. All right, so Tamir Rice's mom slams activist Sean King for profiting off her son's death and brands him an imposter and a white man acting black. Says the mother of Tamir Rice, a black 12-year-old who was shot and killed by a white police officer in November 2014, called out activist Sean King on Tuesday. King had posted a new episode of his podcast entitled "I Spoke to Samira Rice this past week" and detailed his thoughts of the conversation. Rice, however, took to Instagram to refute his claims, saying he was profiting off her son's death and calling him an imposter. King had previously tried to raise money for the family following Tamir's death, but the family said they were unaware of any fundraiser. A court later seized the money, and it was put in Tamir Rice's estate. The mother of Tamir Rice, a black 12-year-old who was shot and killed by a white police officer in Cleveland in 2014, took to Instagram on Tuesday. This post came shortly after King, who had tried to raise money for Tamir's family after his death without the family's consent, posted a new podcast to his website, as it already went over. Yeah. Why do you think it's so important to tell people that we had a conversation? This is her speaking out. Rice asked King in an Instagram post, which was captioned, "For anyone that wants to know the truth." I can actually just pull it up right here. Why do you think it's so important to tell folks we had a conversation? Well, we talked, and everything that was said was very toxic and uncomfortable for me to hear. That you raised additional money and then say you didn't not want to bother me. Personally, I don't understand how you sleep at night. I never gave you permission to raise nothing. Along with the United States, you robbed me for the death of my son. You gave me a cop and donut conversation. All lies, Sean. Please stop thinking we are on the same page. As a white man acting black, you are an imposter that cannot be trusted. My son was 12 years old, and DOJ needs to reopen his case, period. Tamir, human rights were violated. Why would you ever go so far as to make it about you? You are a selfish, self-centered person, and God will deal with you, white man. Ouch. So he gets hit with the black racism at the same time, but this is some of the conversation that she got, here's if you want to know the truth. And so that didn't work out so great for him, so he deleted his Twitter account, and then just vanished for a while. But again, the dude's still a millionaire, and he became a millionaire by exploiting this grift. And it's unfortunate because, there are probably other people who could use the money a hell of a lot more. People who are actually the people in question. It was one of the other things is that they tried to, they went to one place and they were supposed to be raising money for the funeral expenses, and then the mother never got the money. That's why some people and some of the articles I've read have compared them to ambulance chasers, because they seem to show up and then they get the money and then they're gone, and they don't do anything for the community that they claim that they're doing this for. So now we're going to move on to a video put together by Vice, of all people, that actually started to call out the BLM grift. One sec. You're listening to V Radio. Now, when Vice, super leftist Vice, is calling you out, there's a problem.
At the time when Mike Brown and all that happened, I stayed literally right there. Took those 2 blocks, made a left, and went straight down to West Florissant, so where everything happened.
After Michael Brown was killed by Ferguson police in 2014, a new civil rights movement ignited. But Tori Russell says the people around here are still struggling.
If you can imagine an apple tree in the middle of the hood, used to be a lot of trees, tires, kids swinging, picnics, bonfires, all of that.
So this kind of puts a finger right at the situation. These people show up and then they encourage riots, indirectly or directly. They destroy local communities. They destroy local economies, which is what Corey Brooks was complaining about them about. And then this is the state of the places after they're done.
Resources left after Ferguson. We went from being able to feed people and do all these things in our community to we resource deprived. Can't get in, can't ask nobody for money, can't go to the foundations.
So this all happened after the uprising.
It seemed like it was a embargo, a blockade on Ferguson when it came to resources in the movement.
So where should those resources come from, or why has it been so hard to get them?
Honestly, I feel like BLM, Black Lives Matter, is taking all that up out of us.
After Ferguson, the Black Lives Matter movement went national. And after George Floyd died, it became a global rallying cry. In the face of the movement, Black Lives Matter Global Network became a registered nonprofit with a foundation, a political action committee, and $90 million in donations.
Black Lives Matter has transformed into this mainstream kind of commodified movement. What has that been like, kind of watching that take off?
It's different to see a movement that we helped create be hijacked and co-opted. And like you said, sold to the masses, really to edify white people, right? So I feel like now they got some nicer chance, some things that Starbucks and Google can invest in. But does it mean we get freer?
Russell, now a prominent activist, says that since BLM Global Network took off, it's overshadowed grassroots groups like his and made it nearly impossible to raise money for a community that is still very much in need. He joined Brown's father, Mike Sr., to voice their frustrations.
The movement that is catapulted into the limelight has forgotten about Ferguson and the Freedom Fighters. We're asking that Black Lives Matter leadership funds $20 million to Ferguson organizers, organizations, and community foundations to do the work. We're not begging for a handout. We're coming for what we deserve.
Corporations and well-meaning people have been shelling out millions to help end racism. Meanwhile, people within the movement are fighting for its future. They want to know where all this money is going and who should be in charge of it. Is it powerhouse groups like the Global Network? Famous activists?
My people, it's time we stand. It's time we demand the freedom that this land promises.
The families who've lost loved ones at the hands of police? Or local organizers?
I never would have thought meeting Black people in the streets, screaming for change and justice and freedom, that would be the people that sell us out. I thought white folk would do that.
Unfortunately, there are communities all around the country that also suffer police violence, so why should Black Lives Matter focus on Ferguson or Louisville or one community?
BLM is not doing the organizing in the streets. They're not organizing the protests. They may organize the hashtags, but they're not showing up to the mayor's house like we are. So who is BLM?
What do you think about the idea of celebrity activism?
I guess in a movement, visibility can be called whatever. So, I'm standing in front of y'all with cameras. I've been on the New York Times. I've been on CNN probably more times than most people can count. Am I a celebrity activist? But how are the people that's actually doing the work supposed to vote? You can say you don't want the cameras until you get killed somewhere and no one cares about your child until the cameras show up. It's a slippery slope, damn if you do, damn if you don't.
I had to do a press conference, and what I told that chief, I told him, dude, if my son pointed a gun at any one of y'all, show me, I stand down right now. When they called me to that office, my son was running. That man slipped and fell, and he was mad and killed my baby. Shot my baby in the back.
No accident.
15 years old. How?
Every person here is mourning a family member killed by police. Lisa Simpson lost her son, Richard Risher, in 2016, and she organized this weekend in honor of the 5th anniversary of his death.
Do you guys consider yourselves activists now?
Oh, I'm not.
We impacted families.
We impacted
Everybody lost somebody.
Exactly. We impacted
We just fight for our lives.
In the days after Risher's death, Simpson started protesting the LAPD alongside the Black Lives Matter Los Angeles chapter. Eventually, she stopped working with the group after a dispute over a fundraiser and a disagreement over how to fight for justice.
march with them, protest with them. I'm thinking, oh, we got an entity now that's gonna really help us. And because of the way my attributes I brought to the table, because it's my son, and I'm gonna fight how I want to fight. I don't care what nobody say. I was a problem.
In March, Simpson and Samaria Rice, the mother of Tamir Rice, who was killed by police in 2014, put out a joint statement. They demanded that high-profile activists, including BLM leaders, stop monopolizing and capitalizing our fight for justice and human rights.
What do you want from Black Lives Matter at this point?
I want them to pack up all their bags and buy one of them big-ass limos they be going partying in and shit, and make sure they pick up every member that they know globally and ride y'all ass out into the sunset. I'm trying to bring awareness to the masses of the people, because this is an epidemic and it's a problem, not just in Los Angeles, but globally. And I don't want you to have to go through what I'm going
through. We are fed up with the disorganization. Who leading us? Who leading us? So today, let's go, Sergeant. Let's go, Sergeant. Let's go, Sergeant. You got this. You got this. You got a program. You got a program that we here to represent. Say it again.
I love y'all Black. I've been trying to figure out what my purpose is in this fight, bro. Battling with.
I can link you guys to the rest of that later, but you get the picture. Is that now even the people that they're supposed to be representing are turning against them because the money's not making its way back to the people that it's supposed to help. It's ridiculous that any of them, like, actually they showed a little bit of the video there because Jill Stein was present when they were supposed to be fundraising for funeral expenses that mother never got. That's just the funeral expenses. And meanwhile, these people are just sitting on millions in their own money. They could be investing in those communities in ways that would even make them more self-sustaining. It wouldn't just have to be a money hole. And that's what Corey Brooks is trying to do. And he struggles to get funding for the work he does, which is to actually help Black kids get jobs and get into apprenticeships and stay in school. And if they do go to jail, he helps them make sure that they stay employed when they get out. He takes care of them and actually does something to actually positively affect the communities that these people live in. And they're struggling for money. Now, the last I heard, Black Lives Matter was sitting on like 60 million. That's just sitting there. And that's just the money that was donated directly. And that's why they're pointing out that what's going on here is that the donations are just going into this, hole. And then, like, as he's pointing out, now nobody has any money left to donate. They've donated everything they're going to donate. They figured they gave it to Black Lives Matter National, and then that would just be the end of it. And that's just not what's happening. And in the meantime, they're still making more money, still selling T-shirts, making signs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why I put so many dollar signs in the name for Black Lives Matter in this particular, show, because I just wanted to draw attention to it and put it all in one place. So now I want to talk a little bit about some of the other prominent figures who are also making an absurd amount of money. So, for example, even the people who are involved with critical race theory, all that stuff, it's ridiculous. They make insane amounts of money to do what they do. So, for example, I did a video about this guy a little while ago, and I'm sure you guys know who I'm talking about, but here he is. Ibram X. Kendi's net worth is about $1 million, according to this website. I know that he once got paid $25,000 to do a 45-minute Zoom call for a school. As in, he didn't even have to literally go to the school. They set up a TV or something, a screen, and he did his lecture for the school that way. 25 grand from a Zoom call, 45-minute Zoom call. Absolutely ridiculous. Net worth $1 million. That guy makes more in one talk than I do in an entire year. And the grift isn't just for Black people either. And that's what I'm going to expose next. Another prominent activist that, is making an enormous amount of money on her book and is getting paid by companies to teach them this, anti-racism nonsense. Well, that would be Robin DiAngelo. Robin DiAngelo's net worth is like 1.5 million. She gets paid an enormous amount of money to go to corporations and, basically teach them her anti-racism training. And one of the things that she's been attacked for in the past is that in some cases she'll go to events and she's getting paid more than the black speakers that are there. And one of the things that I've noticed when it comes to the critical race theory injection that happens, and I can play a little video that was recently released about the Detroit school system, because now some of these people are just openly admitting that what they're doing is injecting critical race theory into K through 12. But anyway, what they usually do, like what they're doing right now in my kids' school district, is they started off with the superintendent intendant organizing book discussions with all the faculty of white fragility. So they prime you up with the concept of white fragility, which is white fragility is literally just it's gaslighting. If you don't agree with what we're about to tell you in our anti-racist CRT stuff, then it means that you have white fragility, and that's the reason. And it's literally gaslighting. You have some condition, and that's the reason why. You're having resistance to the irrational and illogical things that we're saying. I also did a great show with a guy named Paul Rossi. He was a school teacher who blew the whistle on CRT in his school. You guys can check that out on my channel. I'll probably restream it to Twitch for all of my Twitch people. So moving right along to another grifter. This one is an example of just how much these mainstream media people make to do this stuff. And, we're going to look at probably, in my opinion, one of the most notorious. I call her like what would happen if you turned Bill O'Reilly from Fox inside out? Well, you would get this chick, and I'm sure many of you remember her because she was, literally infamous for her coverage of the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff. But that would be Joy Reid of MSNBC, and her net worth is $6 million. She gets a salary of $1.5 million per year, and she gets paid this much money just to be probably the biggest race grifter in all of media. She's hateful and nasty, and she doesn't contribute anything. But she's another person that, remember, that the media just struggles to make money. One of the reasons why they're jumping on all the Kyle stuff now is that they don't have the Trump stuff to push up their ratings. If you guys ever watch Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar, they frequently go over the fact that because they're both ex-mainstream media, they know how the system works. And they bring up the fact that without Trump now, the left-leaning media has like nothing to bitch about. So again, $6 million, 1.5 million. This is a woman who will lecture you endlessly, about white privilege this, white privilege that, and I will never see $1 million in my entire life. So it's just ridiculous. And the fact that we pay people like her so much freaking money to do what they do, it's just absolute nonsense, so in any case, that's all of the slides I have for this presentation. I will talk to you guys in the chat for a little bit here. You've been listening to V Radio. I hope you guys enjoyed that presentation. And I'd like some comments to go over in the chat. So by all means, I can see you now in Twitch or in YouTube or on YouTube or on Facebook if there is anybody over there. But if you don't think you have white fragility, it's because you have white fragility. Right, exactly. They have it set up in this perfect way so that it's, it's just like witch hunting. If you say that you're not like, the spawn of the devil, then that just means that you absolutely are. Chris Hill, you just jumped on the stream. Oh man, you got here towards the end where I'm just talking to people, chilling with peeps. So again, I know that's not my normal mode, guys. I hope you still enjoyed it. But give me some comments. Like AgroVixen said, that money would take you 20 years at least to be able to make the amount of money that some of these people do. And I agree. It's just absolutely obscene. Absolutely obscene. How many houses is BLM buying? I'm pretty sure it was just Patrisse Cullors who was stupid enough to get caught. Like I said, the other, like Garza and the other lady whose name is escaping me that I talked about earlier, they're just much quieter about what they do. But because Patrisse Cullors was much more open and talking to people and stuff, what she did was getting a lot more attention. And that's the reason why, people are looking at it. I'm sure that the other people, basically, have also bought, fantabulous homes. You don't, have multiple $1 million and not come out that way. But, the money is going into a black hole. Pun intended, Samuel. But, and I would agree. So I hope you guys enjoyed this stream. It took me a while to compile all of that. I was originally planning to do it in like a documentary format, but I decided to go ahead and do it as a stream instead. If you guys have any questions or any comments, let me know. In the meantime, I think what I'm going to do is find this video that I just found that I made a little clip of. Oh. You're listening to V Radio. Please go check out my website, v-radio.us, where you can find more shows like this one and many more. So one of the things that is coming up frequently is that people are lying and saying that critical race theory is not being taught in K through 12 schools. I hear this all the time. And even though it's happening right there in front of me, they'll tell you, turn off the mainstream media, you're just watching too much Fox News, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But recently, a superintendent here in Detroit managed to make the mistake of saying the quiet part out loud. And I'm going to show that now.
Our curriculum is deeply using critical race theory, especially in social studies, but you'll find it in English language arts and the other disciplines. We're very intentional about creating a curriculum, infusing materials, and embedding critical race theory within our curriculum.
So I made that short and sweet so that people could share it easily if they wanted to, but again, that just finally got recorded, and that's a little close to home because while my kids don't go to Detroit schools, that was still they still lie and say that the stuff isn't being taught, and I agree, Black communities will never see any of that money in regards to what we were talking about earlier, and they're not interested in any way in investing in their community in a way that would actually help anyone. That's the problem. It's much easier for them to just continue to get people to freak out and be angry because that's when they get their money. They literally have a monetary interest in seeing more, strife. And that's why they do things like they'll take, say, the Jacob Blake shooting, which in my opinion doesn't deserve any kind of attention because that guy was a piece of shit, who was hurting a girl, and the mother of his children, taken off with her car, but that guy's a millionaire now too. You talk about grifting. I mean, it's unfortunate that he's paralyzed, I guess, but, it certainly worked out great for him to be over at that woman's house and, whom he had, sexually assaulted. And, but anyway, yeah. GL, have you ever watched my video specifically on the definition of the word racism? Because I go over how they tried to rewrite it. It's definitely crazy. Hey, Silver Fox, how's it going? You out there hanging over on Glowicki's stream? Are you going crazy today? I'm glad you guys over on Twitch enjoyed the content. I know it wasn't as sexy or hot as watching me, engage with somebody who's yelling and screaming at me and, didn't have as many explosions or gunfire or rioting as I normally cover. But I do feel that I wanted to put that together. Do you guys want to watch that? GL, you can watch it. I will put it on for you. Come back here. Actually have a whole playlist on that topic. and their purposes. There's been an effort. Sorry about that. So I decided to start a series that I'm going to call Taking Words Back. And it's basically going to be focused on basically kind of trying to deal with and settle these issues that come up when people kind of try to change the definitions of words to suit themselves and their purposes. There's been an effort for quite some time now in the extreme left part of the sociology department at many universities to rewrite the word, or rather the definition of the word racism. And they suggest that the current definition doesn't suit it properly. And the way that this typically manifests is that to suggest that white people cannot be victims of racism because racism is prejudice plus power. Now, I've been monitoring the definition of racism on various dictionary sites, waiting to see, how much political pressure it would take for them to start to change it, and they still haven't changed the one major fundamental issue, which is this notion that power is required for racism. And so, first of all, let me just read this definition, which, even just today, I've noticed has more things added to it, but still, they haven't changed it in such a way that would back up the sociological version that they're attempting to create. And note I say sociological version, but it's actually a fringe group in the sociology movement. It's not all of them, but they tried to project themselves as being so. We'll get into that later. But anyway, racism, a belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, that the racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. The reason I highlighted this is that it's a belief. Racism is a belief. Now, the reason I bring this up when it comes to the issue of power is that you could believe that if you flap your arms hard enough, you'll be able to fly. You don't have the power to actually fly, but you believe it. Now, while an argument can certainly be made that racism, when being practiced by people who are more powerful is more dangerous, it doesn't mean that powerless people who are racists cease to be racists. And that's why you'll see that nowhere in this definition does it say anything about a requirement to have power. Now, they have packed this with as much stuff to try to placate the extreme left as possible, but there's still nothing like that. The systemic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic, and political advantage of another, specifically white supremacy. Institutional racism, one of the many ruses racism achieves in the virtual erasure of historical contributions by people of color, or a political or social system founded on racism and designed to execute its principles. So even in this current, recently updated version of the definition, there's nothing in here about power. And the reason why is because, again, it's a belief. Beliefs don't require power. Beliefs require that you think a certain way. And you could be a KKK member who has no limbs, no eyes, no mouth, no power of any kind. You still believe what you believe. And the reason that this becomes dangerous is because activists are going to tell you that unless you have power, you can't be racist. So therefore, you can engage in everything else that goes along with racism and somehow still not be racist. The effect of this has never been in any way something that has helped us defeat racism. Instead, it encourages people of color to behave as racists, which in turn encourages white people to behave as racists in return. It literally has the opposite effect of what you're hoping to achieve. So let's take that definition and apply it to a statement made by a former organizer for Black Lives Matter in Ontario. Definition of racism: a belief that race is a fundamental detriment or determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. Whiteness is not humanness. In fact, white skin is subhuman. All phenotypes exist within the Black family, and white people are a genetic defect of Blackness. White people have a higher concentration of enzyme inhibitors that suppress melanin production. They are genetically deficient because melanin is present at the inception of life, melanin is directly linked to fertility and the human reproductive system, melanin is directly linked to strong bones, melanin is directly linked to strength of the nervous system, melanin is directly linked to the strength of senses such as vision and hearing, melanin is directly linked to the strength of neurosystems affecting capacities like intelligence, memory, and creativity. Melanin enables Black skin to capture light and hold it in its memory mode, which reveals that Blackness converts light into knowledge. Melanin directly communicates with cosmic energy. This is why the ingenuity of all humanity comes from Blackness. We are the first and strongest of all humans, and our genetics are the foundation of all humanity. Melanin is essential for the efficient performance of all the body's natural functions. Therefore, white people are recessive genetic defects. This is factual. White people need white supremacy as a mechanism to protect their survival as a people because all they can do is produce themselves. Black people, simply through their dominant genes, can literally wipe out the white race if we had the power to. It is why white supremacy is an important, or as an imperial system thrives. It tries to control, suppress, and destroy our existence in Blackness because we are a threat to the genetic annihilation of white people. Do you ever wonder how Black people, after centuries of colonial violence, genocide, and destruction, no matter what systems are created to make us extinct, how we keep coming back? It's because we are superhumans. So, having read that, let me read this definition one more time. Definition of racism: a belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. Now, when I read stuff like this, it makes me more or less kind of think of Mein Kampf for Black people, essentially. The suggestion that all of this stuff, I mean, it's obvious racism. But I've been told that because this person doesn't have any power, they're not racist, despite the fact that this literally textbook fits the definition according to the first, chapter, essentially, of the definition of what racism means. So somehow, because this person doesn't have any power, even though they hold these ridiculous beliefs, they can't be racist. That's what is being fed to us as some sort of lie. And I guess one of the other things that occurs to me when people have conversations like this, and there are plenty more disturbing ones that I'll share in a moment, is that at what point are we supposed to go ahead and label them racists? Is it when they don't have any power? Apparently they're not racist, so we don't have to worry about it yet? At what point does it become cause for concern? Because nobody wants to talk about this. The Nazis, for example, were always racist. They didn't just suddenly become racist when Hitler won the election. They were racist before that. But if we were going to follow this logic, then apparently they were not racist until they had power. So at what point are you supposed to do something about that? Is it when they're saying things like this that you should publicly oppose them? Or should you wait until they're actually putting people on, trucks and cars to be shipped off somewhere to be gassed? Is that when they're racist? At what point did the Nazi regime become racist? What was the turning point? People don't usually want to talk about this much longer after I bring that up because they don't have an answer. The only net effect, again, of allowing things like this to go on and say that they're not racist is to, as I said previously, encourage people of color to become racists which in turn encourages more people who are not of color to become racist. Then let me take a moment to draw a parallel. From the Holocaust Encyclopedia on Nazi Racism, for years before Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, he was obsessed with ideas about race. In his speeches and writings, Hitler spread his beliefs in racial purity and in superiority of the Germanic race, what he called an Aryan master race. He pronounced that his race must remain pure in order to one day take over the world. For Hitler, the ideal Aryan was blonde, blue-eyed, and tall. When Hitler and the Nazis came to power, these beliefs became the government ideology and were spread publicly, displayed posters on the radio, in movies, in classrooms, and in newspapers. The Nazis began to put their ideology into practice with the support of German scientists who believed that the human race could be improved by limiting the reproduction of people considered to be inferior. Hitler and other Nazi leaders viewed the Jews not as a religious group, but as a poisonous race, which lived off other races and weakened them. After Hitler took power, Nazi teachers in school classrooms began to apply the principles of racial science. Think about that.
And I'm going to go out of bounds with what I have to say relative to what we've been talking about, because we understood that we were in a war, and I want to emphasize that to you. We are in a war. I taught on the college level for a number of years at a so-called black college, and I'm down against black colleges. I'm going to tell you straight up, because some of the madness that's going on in these schools. The other thing is that there's only one nigger on the planet. I never use that word. This is the first time I've used it. I don't even think that word, but there's only one nigger on the planet. And the nigger that's on the planet is the one that is destroying the water, the one that's polluting the air, the one that is exploiting people and resources. And the only nigger on the planet is the white man and the white woman. And then finally, I want to say that we need one idea. And we're not thinking about a solution to the problem. We're dealing with all these other things, but these are diversions from the solution to the problem. And we have to start to think about a solution to the problem so that these young brothers and sisters who are here now, who are 15, 16, and 17, are not here 25 years later talking about these same problems. Now, how do I know that the white people know that we are going to come up with a solution to the problem? I know it because they have retina scans, they have what they call racial profiling, DNA banks, and they're monitoring our people to try to prevent the one person from coming up with the one idea. And the one idea is how we are going to exterminate white people, because that, in my estimation, is the only conclusion I have come to. We have to exterminate white people off of the face of the planet to solve this problem. Now, I don't care whether you clap or not, but I'm saying to you that we need to solve this problem because they are going to kill us. And I will leave on that. So we have to just set up our own system and stop playing and get very serious and not be diverted from coming up with a solution to the problem. And the problem on the planet is white people.
Be hard to follow that one. You can get as black as you want. I don't know if you can get that.
By conquering the East, the Nazis had vastly increased the number of people from so-called inferior races under their control, all to be made to suffer by the German master race. The Gypsies of Hungary and Romania, the Slavs, and the Jews of Eastern Europe. 3 million in Poland, 4.5 million in Russia. Ghettos were one solution, But by the end of 1941, another final solution had begun: the mass murder of the Jews of Europe.
So now I've got to ask, when does this man become racist? Is it when he's suggesting these things, or is it when he can actually do these things? If we were to go with the prejudice plus power idea, then I guess technically, by that ridiculous idea, he's not racist. Even when he's calling for genocide, he's not racist. So, let me again submit to you that the only net benefit of suggesting that a man can call for genocide of an entire race as his final solution is not racism. The only benefit of making that the case is to allow something like this idea to rise to power. There's literally no other benefit to this. Because if we were still allowed to call people of color racists, then we could call this out for what it is. But instead, there's this new gray area of, well, if you're one of the approved list of oppressed people, then you're allowed to talk like that. And again, doesn't make any sense. And I acknowledge that there are systemic issues that should be talked about. Like I said earlier, we can discuss that racists who have more power are certainly more dangerous. But again, it's a belief. It's not the power to do anything about that belief. It's a belief. And it's an incorrect belief. It's an ignorant belief. You know, I thought the whole point behind all of this was to call out behavior wherein somebody is apparently, supposedly on the hook for or responsible for everything that has ever been done by people who look a certain way or, you know, are part of a certain group. I thought that's what was the problem. But now we have a situation where there's one class of people that has the privilege to engage in racism and bigotry and calling for genocide. So with that said, I decided perhaps we should end this video with words from a different black intellectual. You may have heard of him.
Will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Okay, guys. So I've had a couple of requests for a couple of more of my videos that are germane to what this conversation was about. I've heard a couple of requests for the truth about Asian and black racism, essentially the relationship that they have, specifically black racism against Asians. Since I've had some of my newer viewers ask for it, I guess I'll go ahead and pull it up. I worked pretty hard on that one, and I think it's done pretty well. And we can also watch the other one afterwards. It's fine with me. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Now, I got people saying that they can't find me on Rumble and the other platforms. Have you gone to v-radio.us or to my Linktree website? I'll drop the link in here in a moment. But you should be able to find everything there. So, all right. You guys might remember that for a while, they were discussing this new surge in Asian hate crime. The problem is that there were a couple of things that were obscured about it, and one of which was they didn't want to talk about who the main perpetrators are. And I want to make it very clear, I'm being kind of rough on black people right now. This is not genetic. This is not any predisposition. It's none of that. This is a learned behavior. It's a cultural behavior. And by no means do I feel that any black person is like engineered to be that way. That's bullshit, But there's a lot of hypocrisy going on in black activism right now that I feel is dragging them down. And it's actually going to lead them in a situation of self-destruction. That's why I am so hard on the people who encourage these riots. I think it's really irresponsible. And I'd have a separate video specifically breaking down the science about that. It's a little brainy, but the truth is you know, they'll quote something like Martin Luther King said that they were the language of the unheard, and then they'll kind of take it out of context to suggest that that means if you feel unheard, go burn shit. But that isn't what he said. Martin Luther King spends about 10 minutes first saying why we need to condemn riots, why they cause more problems than they solve, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But BLM doesn't like that. And if you try to bring it up, then you'll be told, well, you know, white people can't educate us on MLK. So even if I, literally play a video of him saying that, it's not enough for them. You know, but Martin Luther King actually has a big impact on my approach to activism. He means a lot to me specifically, and I'm sure he means a lot to people of color too. But like the reality is anybody like that idiot who runs Black Lives Matter in New York City would not be on Martin Luther King's side of things. You know, so all right, let me grab. Oh yeah, that Dr. Camus Kamban guy is freaking nuts, isn't he? Yeah, that was recorded on C-SPAN shortly after Katrina. And there used to be channels that specialized in exposing the Black supremacy movement, and they just get deleted off YouTube. It seems like they've slowed down on it a bit now, but in any case, go ahead and pull up the next video for you guys. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. It's been fun hanging out with you.
From this country, piece of shit. You fucking chink. You fucking chink. You fucking chink. You's a chink. Get the fuck out of here, you chink. Get the fuck out of here. Fuck out of here. I'm on the sidewalk. I'm on the sidewalk. You chink. You's a fucking chink. The fuck out of here, you chink. Fuck out of here, you fucking chink. Stay away from the car. No. I listen. As long as I'm on the sidewalk, I'm good. All right. Where's the fucking chink right here? Yeah, the fucking chink. You know what my fucking lawyer is? You know what my fucking lawyer is? Suck my dick. 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 You can give him a. How about that? Suck my dick. Suck my dick. Black people can't be racist. Suck my dick. You fucking chink. I said it. You chink. I said it.
So I had wanted to do this show for a while, but the video that I just showed you is actually what finally motivated me to go ahead and do it. But as I'd said in my video about what is racism, I pointed out that the only effect that has come about because of telling people of color, specifically Black people, that they can't be racist is that they go out of their way to be racist. And the whole time they don't even they have this get out of jail free card essentially to go ahead and be as racist as they want to be. In that case, saying things over and over again, racial slurs in this instance, I ask you to imagine what it would be like if the roles were reversed and say that was a white person calling a Black cop the N-word over and over and over again. You know, but again, don't forget, according to them, Black people can't be racist no matter what they're doing. You know, no matter whether or not they're asking for a genocide, it doesn't matter. Again, I did a different video about that topic, and I would urge you to listen to it if you haven't already, because I present some very solid arguments about why that whole concept is horseshit. Anyway. So, of course, with the current upsurge in Black on Asian crime that has been taking place, the critical race theory types had to figure out some way to blame that on white people. White supremacy causes Black citizens to commit anti-Asian hate crimes, Colorado professor claims. The educational watchdog campus reform spotlighted the commentary of Jennifer Ho, which preceded President Biden's newly signed legislation aimed at combating hate crimes against Asian Americans. Anti-Asian racism has the same source as anti-Black racism, white supremacy. So even when it's one race hating another race and neither of those races is white, supposedly it's still white supremacy. Ms. Ho wrote for The Conversation, so when a Black person attacks an Asian person, the encounter is fueled perhaps by racism, but very specifically by white supremacy. White supremacy does not require a white person to perpetuate it. So, in other words, all racism is white supremacy. Does that sound like, not exactly what they meant? Well, there's another article where that's exactly the headline. White supremacy is the root of all race-related violence in the U.S., according to this article. Amid the disturbing rise in attacks on Asian Americans since March 2020 is a troubling category of these assaults. Black people are also attacking Asian Americans. I'm actually going to be revealing the real statistics about this later, but She also goes on to lie and say that white people are the main perpetrators of anti-Asian racism. But in February 2021, a black person pushed an elderly Asian man to the ground in San Francisco. The man later died from his injuries. In another video from New York City on March 29, 2021, a black person pushes and beats an Asian American woman on the sidewalk in the front of the doorway. We can get into this later because I actually have all the statistics that show that this is just nonsense. The notion, because once again, they've got to do damage control for their narrative. White people are the main perpetrators of anti-Asian racism. Statistically, completely untrue. And I'll get into that later in the video.
Sorry, I can't just yell. I came to this country 5 years ago when I was 15, alone, to a boarding school in Pennsylvania. And what I heard of is, if you don't speak English, go home. If you don't speak English good enough, go home. I don't date Asians, and I'd like to have sex with a girl from all the continents. That's why I want to date you. And while I was walking down the street from my high school to Walgreens, I was walking with 3 of my friends from both China and Taiwan. And suddenly, when we were walking, the green light was on, and when we were crossing the crosswalk, there is a car just rushed through us, driven by an African American, shouting that go back to your home, like go back from where you are from, something like that. I don't remember exactly. And then a white lady just parked right by us and say, "Are you okay? Are you hurt of anything?" We're not hurt. It's just shocked and scared of our safety. And this white lady kindly asked, "Can I call the police? Can I do anything for you?" We were like, "It's okay. Thank you very much for your care." The point I'm making here is that we should not distinguish people by their race or gender or anything. Black people can be racist. White people, sorry. Oh no. I will make. I will check this. Sorry. I just mean that we have to look people individually. There are people. Sorry, maybe I don't articulate myself good enough. There are good people, and there are people who are not that embracing to other cultures, who may not live up to standards of proper behaviors. But we have to look through hearts. We have to look into this person and see what she or he really is. Look from the heart, the action, not the race.
Well, I imagine that's not what they were hoping for. Suffice it to say, when you could just look and see the tension that builds up in that group of students when suddenly somebody is suggesting that there might be other people of color who also get in some way victimized by racism, and in this instance, victimized by a person of color, or more specifically, a black person. And the reaction that she got from the students was very negative, as you can see. Initially, they were kind of like just walking up to her and telling her she wasn't going to be allowed to talk. And one of them asked about how it was relevant. I guess what that was about was they were suggesting that they wanted to have a space for only people of color on the campus. And of course, they repeated the bullshit prejudice plus power for racism nonsense. If you guys want to hear more about my arguments about that, I have a whole series that I'm going to be doing, and I started it already with racism, but it's called Taking Words Back. In any case, it wasn't good for their narrative to have, an immigrant basically describing all of the same kinds of, experiences that are supposedly attributed to the racist treatment that immigrants get. But it didn't fit the narrative because in this case, she exposed that people of color and black people in particular can also engage in this kind of bullshit, and it's equally wrong when they do it. Nobody wanted to hear that. Now we're going to move on to a video of Jada Pinkett Smith hosting a panel on this topic. And there's some interesting things that get revealed specifically about the nature of black versus Asian racism. And really what it amounts to is the same cause that you always see for racism, which is that people in poverty-stricken areas fighting over resources and placement and a xenophobic sense that, this other group of people is coming in and opening businesses in our community and preventing us from opening those businesses. It just comes back to the same kinds of rhetoric that is always at the core of these issues. And that's why when I taught my kids about racism, I actually had them watch a film called Gangs in New York, which starred Leonardo DiCaprio and Daniel Day-Lewis. There's really no people of color in that film, yet there's plenty of racism. Because at the time, it was discussing the time period when the Irish were fleeing the potato famine and coming off the boats, and they were the Mexicans that were coming to steal everybody's jobs. But the people of color, particularly the Black activists right now, are very jealous in their guardianship of their place as the most oppressed people. And you can't dare ever suggest that anybody else might have ever gone through any of that. And it's always only centrally a white issue. And it's just not true. Historically, it's not true.
Here's the hard truth. There is real animosity between blacks and Asians, and that is rarely talked about.
Brazen attacks against Asian Americans.
The man walked up and started hitting her in the face.
We want to warn you, the videos are graphic.
The recent surge of hate crimes against Asian Americans.
I've seen my grandma get yelled at. You're Asian, so you're a virus.
Has illuminated a painful divide between the Black and Asian American communities.
You see my skin as dirty.
Asian people just want to hang out with Asian people only.
Anti-Blackness is rooted in our culture. It's very subtle, but is very deeply rooted.
Reports of blacks attacking Asians have fed the tension that goes back decades. In 1991, a black 15-year-old named Latasha Harlins was shot and killed by a Korean grocer during an argument over a bottle of orange juice. The store owner was convicted of voluntary manslaughter, but got no jail time. When justice wasn't served, outrage exploded, fueling the LA riots. The recent increase in social injustices has called for a racial reckoning for Black and Asian Americans.
I guess what I need to understand is, where does their animosity for us come from? Because that's what it feels like. It feels like that they have come into our communities, taken over our stores, taken over the hair and nail industry, and really blocked us from being able to thrive in that industry because we're coming into those stores. We're getting our hair and nails done. And what are they giving back to the community? And when we come into those environments and patronize their businesses, we're not even treated with respect and kindness.
Yeah.
I've had some very volatile and passionate discussions with family members and friends. And most of my friends feel like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't have the bandwidth or the interest because they don't care about us. And they don't treat us with respect. So I don't care about anything that they're talking about. I'm worried about what's happening with my people, because we have our own struggle.
And that's the majority. That is the majority. You're right.
So it's very difficult for there to be any real concern. I don't even feel like they want our help. Now, I may hear something different from the scholars. But from the average person, do they care? Are they interested in a relationship with me? I just had an experience in the airport where I'm standing in line waiting for coffee.
I do want to take a moment to note, everybody sitting in that table is ridiculously wealthy. So the notion that she has her own struggle is just fucking stupid. Anyway.
And I had a whole conversation going. A white man my age came behind me, stood in line. We started having a conversation. A young couple in front of me, white, had a conversation. I've never had an Asian person come up to me that I didn't know to start a conversation, to speak to me, to give me eye contact in any
feel like
way.
that's also a cultural thing as well, Gam.
It is cultural, but when I go on vacation and I go to a foreign country, I make it my business to try to be conscious of the culture there so that I can act accordingly.
Right.
Right? So I think that we're owed some of that when you come to our country and you start businesses. That's just even good business practice, to treat your patrons with respect and care. Like, that's just common sense. Right?
Yep.
But we don't feel like we get that. And I also recognize that it's a very limited exposure that we have with the community. They're so separate. That's the only interaction that we really have.
And the cultures are so drastically different.
Yeah.
That's what I've come to understand. But I hear you. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings culturally.
Yeah.
The biggest misconception is that Asian is just Asian. You know, it's like Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Filipino. Like, you just throw them all in one.
But they're all so different.
So different.
Yeah,
just
but
various cultures, right?
Yeah, but it's difficult to distinguish one from the other sometimes too.
Not if you pay attention.
But at the end of the day, what we can't allow is hate of any kind
to survive,
to exist.
I hear this conversation endlessly. They didn't do that, so why should I have to do this? And they didn't do that, so I did this. And it's really hard because we do feel hurt. And we
feel neglected.
Exactly.
And we feel overlooked. And we feel not seen. I get all of that. And that's what makes it so difficult. Because I understand. But I also know there's nothing in the world that makes a woman 65 years old in New York City from the Philippines getting beat up by a man and nobody helps. That makes no sense whatsoever. Hate is hate.
And here's the thing. The so-called negative thing that any particular group does is seen as representative of that group. Black people have a right to feel hurt and injured by the fact that everywhere in this world to be darker is to be dehumanized, and there's no question about that, which means that we should be especially careful not to reproduce that same hurt to other groups.
When that tension starts to brew, our communities aren't the ones that are benefiting from it.
Not at all. For Black people to be demonizing Asian brothers and sisters with the Wuhan flu, the Chinese flu, who wins? White supremacists. So it pits us against each other.
And that exact idea of pitting minorities against each other is the most perfect path towards domination. I mean,
white supremacy is what? We're not talking about individual white brothers and sisters. We're talking about the conscious or unconscious belief in the inherent inferiority of some and the superiority of others.
And I think that's the thing. I think there's a lot of people in our community specifically who don't recognize the white supremacy construct that we're falling into, you know? That's the thing. Like how you just broke that down. How you've been breaking it down. It's like, I didn't really have the words, you know what I'm saying?
No. I mean, I'm at the red table. I got to bring my A game. You understand what I'm saying?
Like, that's exactly it.
But it's got power.
But it
That's
also,
what's
Michael,
ruining and ruling us.
and it also is stoking fear
Yeah.
amongst people
Yes.
whose livelihood and lives and the way they've always known things feels threatened. And that's the
right.
thing about this period right now. And white people are starting to recognize, wow, I really had no idea.
What's interesting, though, the ingenuity of white supremacy is it don't matter who's in control as long as the system is operating.
Right.
So you could have a black head of Department of Housing under the Trump administration, and you still gonna have white supremacist ideology being pumped through that black mouth and body. The ingenuity of white supremacy is it doesn't demand a white body to be efficacious and
Ooh,
effective.
that's a very important point. Basic, have you personally felt the surge of animosity that is happening?
I have been teased and been on the receiving end of aggressions my whole life. But over the last year, the level of vitriol and just the hatred that is expressed has been really unnerving. I mean, even people wishing harm on my own children because we brought the coronavirus to this country. So absolutely, but it kills me that so many of our Asian elders and mothers and children are being attacked so senselessly for no reason.
At this table, we always want to hear from you. So check this out.
Real quick note, I just went and looked up Michael Eric Dyson's net worth, and it's over $9 million. He definitely knows his struggle.
Recently, a Stop Asian Hate post on our Red Table Talk Instagram and Facebook page confirmed this deep divide. We received so many comments and responses like these that relate frustration, anger, and pain.
I'm supposed to care about Stop Asian Hate. I'm supposed to care about what's happening to Asian people. They're rude, they're disrespectful, and they're racist, if you ask me. Rushing us out their stores, following us around, watching us every move like we're gonna rob the whole store. But they don't mind taking them black dollars. And they didn't mind opening up these businesses in our neighborhoods. They have never helped me and mine do anything. So why would I jump on some Stop Asian Hate bandwagon?
That was the majority. And it was so deep that there were lots of posts that had to be pulled. That's how offensive they were.
How would you address that?
You know, I think it's really easy to say things like, well, this black person did something to me in this nail salon, or this Asian person disrespected me. Those are individual experiences, and that can't categorize
the whole
stereotype.
That's not the totality. They are so diverse. I mean, there are over 20 different Asian cultures living in this country with different languages, different traditions. And frankly, not only do I know very little about being Thai or Laotian or Cambodian or Vietnamese, I don't even know the first thing about being Chinese because I'm not from China. I'm from America.
And this sister, bless her heart, I don't doubt her heart. I don't doubt the fact that this is her experience. I don't want to diss black people who have been mistreated. I'm not saying there are no rude Asian people in stores that have done exactly what this woman said. But here's the question. I would say this to black people. When we say this, and God bless this woman, right? White folk been saying that forever about us. You know, I don't mind, but these black people, they're just rude. They're loud. You can't get them to work on time. They never come prepared. They always got excuses, on and on and on. Is that a large enough sample size for you to determine this is the fundamental characteristic of Asian brothers and sisters? Or if we're gonna get real ugly about it, how many black people have stolen from them that their attitudes have been misshapen by the behavior of certain black people?
Of a few.
And you gonna go, wait a minute, most black people ain't ripping you off. Most black people, right? So I would ask them, I understand your pain, but don't draw conclusions based on your limited sample size, because white folk have been doing that forever. And Jim Crow is based on that.
Right.
White supremacy is based on that. You don't want all black people being judged by your knucklehead cousin.
Right.
How do
This is what I'm saying to you. Why the rage, bruh? You're doing well, but you're a mean, mad white man.
Michael, let me ask you a question. What do we say to black people in the community who feel threatened and feel as though that the presence of Asians in our community are stealing their livelihood?
Why be mad at the Asian brothers and sisters who came here looking for an opportunity? Don't hate the player.
Right.
Hate the game. Why do Asian people have those nail shops? Where could they get them? In the black community. Be mad at white supremacists who deny black people access to the loans to be able to own the shops in their own community. And the game at this point is black people can't get loans. The reason Asian brothers and sisters are on those shops, because they were able to get loans. Right?
This is the thing, so because I want to make this really clear. You are basically saying that it's the construct of white supremacy that makes it possible that Asians can get those loans before we can.
Yes.
Come teach for me, because you just broke it down.
Right.
You broke it down
I
better
just
than
want to
me.
make sure that it's clear
That's exactly right.
So I want to take a moment and discuss these loans that Mr. Dyson is referring to that allegedly Asian people can get that black people can't get. It's interesting, first of all, to note that there's a huge contradiction in his claim, which is that he says that the reason why black people can't get loans is because the banks are run by white supremacists, but in the same breath says that Asian people are getting these loans. Most white supremacists I've spoken to are not any more fond of Asians moving into this country and starting businesses than they are of anybody else. They're generally xenophobic and want everything for white people. So it just doesn't make any sense. You know, he's not really, I mean, you know, but to just kind of put a stamp on it, according to, you know, the Minority Business Development Agency, immigrant businesses start with more capital than others do. The most common source of startup capital for immigrant-owned businesses is personal or family savings, with roughly 2/3 of businesses reporting this source as starting capital. So the reality is they, you know, basically the Asian culture generally is very frugal with their money, very careful, very hardworking. And that's the reason why they have more initial capital, you know, than other people. And that's not uncommon. And it's also not exclusive to Asians. There are people from many cultures that come over here as immigrants who don't seem to encounter all of these issues of white supremacy holding them back.
I'm not saying they haven't done everything you said, but having said that, are you judging an entire race of people?
Yes.
Hmong, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Korean? Based upon your interaction with some Asian folks who treated you like crap. That kind of thing is what we've been fighting against. That's what Martin Luther King, Ella Baker, and Joanne Robinson have been fighting against all of our lives. We got to do better. Black people attacking Asian people in the street. Now, here's the use of white supremacy. The disproportionate number of people who are attacking Asian people are not black, but it serves the narrative that see these criminalized black people who are out of control.
At this point, Mr. Dyson is simply lying, or maybe he's just ignorant of it, or maybe he's just engaged in confirmation bias. But unfortunately, the statistics don't actually bear out what he's saying. In this article here, entitled Race and False Crime Narratives, written by Heather McDonald, Sorry about that, guys. I screwed that up. What happened is I was telling you guys some more information. I came across another article that demonstrated that the real reason why they're having problems with the loans is because of the fact that, unfortunately, just due to cultural practices, African Americans usually are not doing as well credit wise. So again, it's not genetic. It's just cultural. Like one of the things I noticed when I was younger was that people were spending a lot of money in the ghetto on stuff they probably shouldn't have been buying, like really expensive shoes, stuff like that. And note I said the ghetto, not, and I said people. I didn't say just black people. It's a problem in that in that whole like area. So anyway, I apologize for that. I realized what happened is I paused it to talk to you guys, and then I realized I hadn't re-enabled my mic yet. So we're good to go here. I'm going to play it again. And Eva, yeah, there's your link. This was called Black Racism Against Asians, the Real Data.
Against. That's what Martin Luther King, Ella Baker, and Joanne Robinson have been fighting against all of our lives. We got to do better. Black people attacking Asian people in the street. Now, here's the use of white supremacy. The disproportionate number of people who are attacking Asian people are not black, but it serves the narrative that see these criminalized black people who are out of control.
At this point, Mr. Dyson is simply lying, or maybe he's just ignorant of it, or maybe he's just engaged in confirmation bias. But unfortunately, the statistics don't actually bear out what he's saying. In this article here, entitled Race and False Crime Narratives, written by Heather McDonald, published in the Manhattan Institute, the article gave details and dates and links to a great deal of Black on Asian hate crimes that took place nationwide. And basically, she gets down to this point. In fact, the suspects in all of those cases were Black. The news reports rarely mention that detail. Had the suspects been white, their race would have led each news report. A former member of the Oakland Police Department's robbery undercover suppression team tells me that this racial pattern of attack and its lack of coverage is long-standing. No one cares about Asian robbery victims, he says. We used to follow around elderly Asians, waiting for the bad guys to start circling. This has been one of my long-term frustrations. They are pretending to care now, but ironically blaming it on white supremacy, even though the suspects in Asian robbery attacks are almost exclusively, in this cop's experience, Black. The New York Police Department compiles the most extensive data on hate crimes in the country. These data confirm the Oakland officer's observation. A Black New Yorker is over 6 times as likely to commit a hate crime against an Asian as a white New Yorker, according to the New York Police Department data. In 2020, Blacks made up 50% of all suspects in anti-Asian attacks in New York City, even though Blacks are 24% of the city's population. Whites made up 10% of all suspects in anti-Asian attacks in 2020 in New York City, but account for 32% of the city's population. If we include Black Hispanics in the Black category, Blacks account for 60% of all anti-Asian attacks in 2020. This is the source article for the reports that the author was using. I will make this available in the description of the video as well.
After months of brutal attacks during the COVID-19 pandemic,
we never know when we're at the wrong place at the wrong time,
and xenophobic messages against Asian American people that culminated in this deadly shooting in Atlanta, a study released this year spotlights that hate against Asian American people has been happening for years. The study is called Hate Crimes Against Asians. The report looks at numbers from the U.S. Census and the National Incident-Based Reporting System between 1992 and 2014.
Now remember, Dyson just claimed that it wasn't actually Black people primarily attacking Asian people. He just point blank lied.
It compared hate crimes against Asian Americans to hate crimes against African Americans and Hispanic people. After crunching the data, researchers found victims in all 3 groups tend to share similar demographics, with hate crimes mostly targeting young men between 18 and 34 who live near where they were attacked. And the analysis also revealed some differences. According to the study, Asian Americans have a higher risk of being attacked by strangers, are less likely to be assaulted in their homes, and are more likely to be targeted at school. It also found Asian Americans have a higher chance at being victimized by non-white offenders compared to Black and Hispanic people.
Here's a peer-reviewed journal article on this topic titled Hate Crimes Against Asian Americans. Here's an excerpt from that article. Asian Americans also have relatively higher chance to be victimized by non-white offenders, 25.5% versus 1% for African Americans and 18.9% for Hispanics. I don't know exactly which demographic Mr. Dyson believes is doing this, but the statistics would say that his rhetoric on the issue is inaccurate. Not surprising. So I want you guys to be very conscious of the fact that somebody is going out of their way to be sure that any rhetoric or dialogue about anything race related always has to be dialed back to being white people's fault somehow. And that generalizations about entire groups of people are unacceptable unless they're white people. And violence against any groups of people when motivated by race is apparently unacceptable unless it's against white people. The inevitable reaction to this is, as I said earlier, is that it only creates more racism. This tribal instinct that we have in the back of our heads, essentially to defend our group if we feel our group is being attacked, is what is created by the way that these activists go about doing things. It is completely counterproductive, and it literally creates the opposite effect. It is my view, and I haven't actually had a chance to really review any statistics, that racism as a problem has only gotten consistently worse. I will say that all of the racists that I speak to have said that these situations have done a great deal for their recruiting. So bear all of this in mind and consider for a moment that the entire notion that Black people can't be racist is completely asinine, and that suggesting that they can't is just basically giving them permission to be exactly the kind of people that are going to in turn create more racism as a response. Thanks for listening. Matter. So of course, some time ago, I looked up the actual statistics when it came to how often people are killed by police, no matter what color they are. And what I discovered was, and this was through exhaustive, just looking up the statistics myself to be sure that I wasn't being swayed by either the left or the right and their dialogue and narrative about this issue. And what I discovered was interesting, but suffice it to say, it's not what you think, most likely. And it's definitely nowhere near as common as you've been led to believe. I'm going to go into that with the hard numbers here in a moment. And I'm going to put all of the links necessary to source every number that I quote in this video below. Before I begin, though, I do want to make clear, all deaths matter. Obviously, anything that results in the death of a human being is important, and it does deserve attention. But much like the false bag of goods that was the war on terror that we were sold, back in 2008 to go to Iraq, I think that something similar is going on here. One of the things that was mentioned by one of my mentors, Peter Joseph, in his film Zeitgeist Addendum, was that more people were dying by peanut allergies, complications of them, than they were by terrorist acts. Yet, for some reason, there was an effort in the media to make everybody afraid of terrorists to the point of allowing us to go to war and kill far more people than were even basically a number that was way higher than anybody who died on 9/11. There were people who had a motive to inflate that perception in the common populace, and it's because they had an agenda. The same thing is clearly true when it comes to the common parlance and dialogue and narrative regarding police shootings. I'm going to provide the hard statistics below, including, where you can find where all of these numbers that I am about to quote come from. The population, the black population, the number of people on average that are shot per year, it's all going to be there. If I miss anything, by all means, say something in the comments, and I will happily find you a source. But needless to say, I just spent a whole day looking these up to find them. So let's dip into it. The population of the United States is 331,449,281. Of that population, 48,221,139 and 139 are blacks. On an average year, we have about 61,500,000 police interactions. On average, that's 26% are white, 21% are black. The statistics I read in the article actually state that there's really not much of a significant difference. On average, about 1,000 people are killed by police a year. This is not a number adjusted for legit shootings. In other words, this is just 1,000 people are killed, and it's a number that has not been, examined so far as which shootings were good and which shootings were bad. And yes, I'll acknowledge that some shootings that are recorded as legitimate, may not be, but that doesn't change the fact that we're only looking at about 1,000 people a year. 1,000 people are dying out of 61,500,000 police interactions. And the black population is 48 million plus. So overall, we're looking at a number that I would say is nowhere near as high as most people on the left would have probably expected to hear. And most people I show these statistics to usually go into denial. They come up with conspiracy theories as to why these statistics could be wrong or whatever. But regardless, these are the hard numbers. About 1,000 people a year are killed in 61,500,000 police interactions. Now, in contrast, 7,484 blacks were murdered in 2019. Statistics show on average 90% of black murder victims are generally killed by other black people. This is the black-on-black crime statistic. But to be fair, most races kill their own race more often than other races. In most of the statistics I noticed for different years, this number of 90% was sometimes 91, sometimes it was 89. So this is basically about an average. But it usually is just slightly higher than the rate at which white people kill each other, just for the sake of conversation. But still far more than are killed by police in 2019. In 2019, 13 unarmed blacks and a total of 259 black people were killed by police, out of that 1,000 average that I mentioned earlier. Now, I plan on doing a separate show specifically about the black-on-black crime issue, but it's really more than just a black-on-black crime issue. It's a issue that is brought about by the criminal culture of the ghetto. I grew up in the ghetto myself, and it's a culture that affects everybody who lives there, no matter what color you are. It just so happens that there are a disproportionate amount of people of color who live in those neighborhoods, and therefore the reputation follows them. But I can assure you, having grown up there, I had just as many violent encounters with white kids, Hispanic kids, and Asian kids as black kids, because the entire culture of the ghetto is wrapped up essentially in the gangland thinking. Kids grow up and they want to be gangbangers. That's their heroes through the music, are encouraged, basically to kill people over dumb things. So that culture has to be dealt with, and it's actually a cause of a great deal more suffering and death in these communities than any amount of police killings. Now, if you consider for a moment and compare 7,484 to 259. We have a problem that's killing 7,484 black people a year, and we have a problem that killed 259 black people a year, 13 of which were unarmed. Which one of these things do you think would be the priority of an organization like Black Lives Matter? Again, all deaths matter. So, of course, police killings still matter, and we should look at things that we can do to reform the police to bring that number as close to zero as humanly possible. But some people will bring up a legitimate point to say, but more black people are, disproportionately killed by police. Okay, I have an explanation for that. So this information is taken from the FBI crime statistics, broken down by race and individual crimes. I included the crimes here where people of color are unfortunately higher represented so far as their participation. 69.4% whites as compared to 26% blacks as far as overall. So in this graph, black people make up 26% of the people calculated, yet committed 51.2% of the murder and non-negligent manslaughter, 52% of the robberies, 52.7 technically, and their proportion of weapons carrying, possession, etc. is 41%, while again only making up 26.6% of the population in this situation. Prostitution and commercialized vice, 42%. So as compared to whites and the other races, there's a disproportionate amount of crime, particularly the violent crimes such as murder, robbery, weapons carrying, etc., being carried out by the black population. And I want to make this very clear. This is not genetic. This is not anything that black people are inherently predisposed to doing. That's bullshit racist talking. And I'm not doing that. I've met people of color who do not grow up in these environments, who grow up outside of that culture that I referred to earlier, and they're just fine. And only an ignorant racist would imply that all black people are more predisposed to crime naturally. And I definitely don't agree with that. The thing is that there's a lot of hypocrisy going on currently where people of color in activism feel that they can generalize white people, and they will sometimes use statistics to back that up. But as far as to why it's possible that more black people are being killed by police, if they're engaged in, a disproportionate amount of violent crime, the likelihood of them dying at the hands of police goes up exponentially. And when you consider again that same culture that I referred to earlier venerates shooting police officers, you hear it in the music, it's also more likely that they're going to resist. Another point of the issue that you have to consider is that inevitably, if there's a group of people that are committing the most of anything, that's going to create a bias in any police officer. And it's not correct. I'm not saying that racial profiling is morally correct, but it does explain it. And it's a look at what the problem really is that people don't really want to take. They don't want to take that look. It's much easier to blame the system alone. And the system plays a big part in it. Poverty plays a big part in it. But unless we fix this cultural issue that venerates crime, that makes gangbangers into heroes, and people who go out and get a job or people who get good grades are literally made fun of in that culture. I know, I was one of those people. And that's again true of any race of people who grow up in these communities. You can make an argument that we could do things like invest money into the communities, and I absolutely agree that reducing poverty will help to fix this problem. But it's not enough on its own. You can't just throw money at this problem. Statistics have shown that when poor people win the lottery, a lot of them are back to being poor within about 4 years. This is not a problem that you can simply throw money at and get it to go away. At the end of the day, and I've done a lot of studying about this, people get roped into the drug culture because it's easier than flipping burgers. You make more money, lots more, usually very quickly. It's very seductive. You couple that with any of the other illegal activities and how fast people make money, and nobody wants to get a job at that point. The same thing has to do with the schools. And yes, the schools in those areas are certainly underfunded, but there is also a culture that discourages kids It's just not cool. It was not cool. Like, I literally ended up getting picked on for using large words. Like, that's a thing you could get your ass kicked for in the ghetto. You know, getting good grades. I know kids would actually hide their report cards because they didn't want anybody to know that they were doing well at school because they didn't want to be picked on. And that's true in every culture to some degree. But I'm telling you, violence, you would get jumped for it. So, coming back to the main point, if a certain segment of the population, due to cultural issues, is participating in more violent crime, the likelihood of them being shot by police goes up. This is just basic common sense. It's not racism to point this out. It would be racism to suggest that black people are inherently violent. And that's wrong. It's ignorant. It's stupid. And as I said earlier, that's definitely not what I'm saying. But these statistics don't lie. You know, and there was a time when there was activism, I would say mostly in the 80s and the 90s. And even ironically, the hip hop artists joined in on this. The activism that was geared towards trying to stop violence in the streets. But it's going to take community effort and activism. And some of it's going to be dangerous because these people that you've basically kind of pretended don't exist, meaning the criminal element, they're not going to take kindly to you trying to get rid of them, and they will kill you. Dead. And I think at the end of the day, that's one of the reasons why people are so much more, full of bravado when it comes to confronting the police. Because the police are ordered to stand there and leave you alone. And I'm not saying they always do, and this is in reference to at protests and riots. The criminals will just kill you. So, with that said, let's talk about some other causes of death, as far as, all people in the United States. And then we'll discuss how this situation is being bent out of proportion and who benefits. So some time ago when I was researching this issue, I stumbled on this article. It's called The Death Index, Top 59 Ways to Die. Number 59 was accidental discharge of firearms. Number 58 is killings by law enforcement officers. What's killing more people than death at the hands of the police? Death in childbirth? Death in house fires? Death drowning in a swimming pool happens more often than dying at the hands of police. Death from gallbladder disorders. How many people do you know who have died of gallbladder disorders? Cervical and uterine cancers. Complications of medical or surgical care. Homicide not related to guns. So, the reason I bring this up is I want you to think for a moment, how many people do you know have died as of complications of surgery, or cervical or uterine cancers, or gallbladder disorders, or drowning in swimming pools, or just accidental drowning in general, or dying in house fires, or in childbirth? I'm going to wager that you may know one or more persons, but not very many, who've died in these ways. Killings by law enforcement officers is actually one of, it is relevant, but it's not by any means one of the more pronounced ways that people die in the United States. The leading causes of death, are some of the nastier diseases like coronary heart disease and such. And killings by law enforcement officers is near the bottom. Now, the reason why this is a problem is that the wording that is being used in the media to control your outrage would be to say things like genocide. We charge genocide. Systemic murder and oppression of blacks continues in the U.S. We should invoke the Genocide Convention in response to fatal police shootings. So if we go back to the statistics I said earlier, they're suggesting that 259 people out of millions of black people in millions of police interactions is a genocide. It's just not. The question is, why do people lie about this? What is the benefit they have to lying about this? There are multiple people I feel that benefit from dividing and conquering the poor. It's not about the race. The elite don't care what your color is. They didn't care when they were buying slaves from African kings that the African kings were black. They didn't care when, say somebody like Ben Carson became wealthy and then gets appointed to the White House by a Republican president. If you can become wealthy, you're on their team. And brief side note, they also don't care about the poor white trash kids. They're not interested in helping us. If this was all about race, there would be some kind of rescue effort to save white kids who are in poverty. And we do exist. But I can assure you, having grown up in the ghettos and also spending a significant period of my time in my childhood in the trailer park ghettos in the South, which nobody ever talks about, that are predominantly white, there's no efforts being made by the elite to rescue poor white people. But there are efforts to divide the poor white people from the poor black people and the poor Hispanic people and the poor Asian people, because the idea of all of us working together terrifies them. So, what is it really about? It's about preventing the poor from uniting to recognize who the real enemy is. Now, that's just a sociological issue that I would suggest, is that everywhere there are wealthy people, they find ways to set the poor against one another. And race is an excellent way to do this. The natural tribal-like instincts can be activated by people through misleading them about things like this. And when you think about it, the media has been engaged in just that. We keep seeing videos of police shootings, and it would give you the impression, and I've heard black activists say this because they honestly believe it, that thousands of black people are dying at the hands of police every day. When the reality is, only about 1,000 people total are dying at the hands of the police every year, and 259 black people died at the hands of police in 2019. Who else benefits from all of the racial division and hatred? Well, activism is often big money. And the BLM co-founder has purchased like $500,000 homes, like 4 of them. And while I believe entirely that it's possible that that money was all, not actually from the donations to Black Lives Matter, that remains to be seen, as they only basically registered with the IRS last year. They will be required to report where their money is going. But I've done some reading on this issue, and Patrisse Cullors was paying members of her family, as consultants and such. And that's also how she was pulling her salary, that was a 6-figure salary from Black Lives Matter. I do think the majority of her money likely came from the book deals that she has. I guess she's got a deal with YouTube, and she's got a deal with one of them, like a movie filmmaker or whatever. So those are other places where she could have gotten her money, but it doesn't change the fact that she only got that money, even the money that she earned herself, because of her time in activism. And her activism was only garnering so much attention because of all the hype around this issue of police violence against black people. So that's another major motive. It also arguably had political effects in the last election. So that's another group of people who stand to benefit from it. And finally, and I've brought this up during my series on Abolish the Police, another group that stands to benefit from all of this nasty activism, specifically in the direction of trying to alienate and dehumanize police officers, are the legitimate criminals. Now, if you looked at this picture initially, you might be thinking to yourself, damn it, we really need to demilitarize the police. But that's not police. That's the Mexican drug cartel, wearing all that military gear, driving the military vehicles, and using the military weapons. They're now taking a special interest in Seattle, in the Pacific Northwest, and places that have defunded their police departments. If you were stupid enough to abolish your police department, they would simply take over. In Mexico, the cartel was able to basically mount an armed assault on the Mexican police to the point that it forced the president of Mexico to order that they release a major drug lord that had taken years to finally capture. And what did the president say afterwards? Well, we're going to focus more on social programs for the poor to prevent crime. Sound familiar? One of my friends who attends Black Lives Matter protests said that in the abolish police groups that he knows, he runs into two types of people. People who have no idea what crime looks like, who've probably never lived in a neighborhood where there were gunshots, who've never had, lost a family member or, been targeted for violence themselves by a criminal gang. And then he said the other group of people who would love to abolish the police are the criminals he knows. People that he sees at these protests that are lifelong criminals who, of course, know that their lives will be a hell of a lot easier if you abolish the police. Now, a good argument could be made for decriminalizing drugs, and I agree with that. But the criminal element isn't going to cease to exist just because you decriminalize drugs, any more than it did when we basically ended prohibition of alcohol. These gangs will find something else. The mafia, the Italian mafia, for example, was only taken down by hard police work that involved extensive surveillance and a lot of extra work. And before that, they could pretty much kill anybody they wanted. And those organizations stand to benefit a great deal from the way that this activism is turning. It also has the side effect of making leftist ideologies look like domestic terrorism. And I've done separate shows on that topic that you can look for on my channel. If you have any trouble finding them, mention them in the comments, and I'll link them to you. But domestic terrorism, as defined by the Patriot Act, could easily, be used against us as activists. So I'm going to recommend a channel called Police Activity. Spend, say, an hour watching the very carefully recorded videos on this channel so that you can actually understand what goes on during police shootings. And to be clear, this channel covers bad police shootings as well as legitimate and justified police shootings. I think a lot of people that I talk to about this have never really spent any time analyzing things from the perspective of the police officer in question and remembering that they're human. There's an effort to defund the police, and then there's an effort to dehumanize the police. These stupid fucking idiots who say shit like ACAB. Whoever thinks that all cops are bastards, you're basically generalizing in the same way that the racists and the bigots you claim to oppose do. There are some bad cops, but they make up a minority, and that's just the statistical truth. But if you doubt me, spend some time watching this channel. There's a couple of videos on here in particular that actually left a big impression on me. One of them was where a black man on a bus had passed out because of a drug overdose. They spent 30 minutes with this guy trying to convince him that he needed to go to the hospital because they had used basically the drug that brings people back from a drug overdose. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, and he could die at any moment, and he wouldn't go along with it, and he also wouldn't let them search him. For 30 minutes,
drug is
they were
Narcan.
polite and coddled this guy. And then eventually he drew his pistol and he killed an innocent fireman. This is the kind of stuff that police deal with on a regular basis. And police are humans. Ask yourself who benefits when it comes to alienating yourself from the police. I can tell you that no successful revolution has ever taken place without some kind of relationship with the police force and the local military, unless they were extremely weak, which they're not. So if we continue to alienate them and we basically allow ourselves to be alienated from them, who benefits? I also recommend this video, which I will link in the cards at the end of my video. But this is Jocko Willenick, a former Navy SEAL, discussing the issue of the police and their training with Joe Rogan. It's about a 30-minute clip, but by the time he's finished, you'll understand exactly the nature of the real problem when it comes to policing. He said that police should spend about 15% of their time training and practicing. The reality is most police train for a very short period of time because that's all they're allotted, and they usually don't get any time for practice unless they go to the range on their own, and they don't get any practice when it comes to things like de-escalation techniques. Joe Rogan also had on a different guest who was a police psychologist who explained a lot about their issues, including the fact that she only usually gets to see police officers once a year to help train them in de-escalation tactics. And I'm not opposed, for example, to us adding a new faction or, just category as far as police are concerned of people who are experts on peaceful de-escalation. But suggesting that social workers alone can be deployed to every situation is just fucking stupid. Particularly, if it's something like domestic violence. Having had a mother who was beaten by my stepfather, I can tell you that no amount of social workers showing up would have solved that situation. He needed to be taken down. It's that simple. The other thing I would say is that in many cases, you can't really expect these social workers to go to these situations without a police escort, which puts you right back where you were. If I have new listeners who are watching this who still have reservations about my point of view on this, you can go back to my channel and watch my 2 videos on the topic of defunding the police and my arguments against them. Thanks for listening. So, rather ironically, almost as if on cue, shortly after I uploaded the video that I just did, basically putting more on into this whole issue of what the definition of racism is, I come across this on Twitter. Somebody named Jesse says, "What's with white people and saying if the roles were flipped with every post about black issues?" To which I said, "Because of the sheer hypocrisy of saying you don't want to be judged by the color of your skin, but you do want to be able to judge white people by theirs." This person named Juno pipes in, "Y'all have been judging other races by their skin color for centuries now. Y'all literally created it." And I said, "By the way, by saying y'all, you just did exactly what I just said you were doing. Because they're implying that y'all includes me and apparently every white person as this conversation continues." But anyway, at some point they tried to just rage quit and said, "And this is why people that see your replies believe you're racist. Good night." To which I replied, "LOL, I am racist because I said it's wrong to judge people by the color of their skin, even if they are white. LOL, yeah, good night. Get a little more sleep and maybe they'll explain that better." To which Juno said, "Who created the whole premise of judging people by the color of their skin? It wasn't my race, so tell me who was it?" To which I said, "Well, it wasn't me or anyone I know. Are you responsible for everything that other people of your race have done? Think hard about this." And then they said, "I said race, baby. Whose race was it that started the judgment of other people's skin? Reading is important." And I said, "A race does not create things as a race. The entire white race," which I put in quotes, "did not create anything, just as the entire black race," which I put in quotes, "did not create crime. or anything else that actual racists associate with you. Reading is important. Then they said, but did white supremacy exist before the white people came and enforced it? Yes or no? Trying to like box the conversation. And I said, let's go over this again. Are all white people therefore the creators of white supremacy or judging people by the color of their skin? Individuals are responsible for what they do as an individual. Humans are not their color. So oddly enough, this is, because one of the reasons people ask me, like, why do you do stuff like this? Why do you make videos about this? Why do you take these, screenshots and stuff? Because if I get in a conversation about this kind of thing, I'll be told nobody says this. I'll literally be told nobody was saying that. You're making that up. Nobody actually says that. And it comes back to what I said about critical race theory and anti-racism, is that they do want to flip everything around, but that to them is really the only solution, like, is just to turn everything in the other direction. It's not about equality, it's about revenge. And the idea that you can suggest that white people created the idea of, judging people by other people, by the color of their skin, and therefore white people, like, this is the whole basis of why this is stupid and fallacious. This comes back to, this is in fact a guilt by association fallacy on a massive scale. So, basically this kind of thing goes on all the time in the conversations, and this idea of talking about white people do this, and white people being y'all, and then this is why you're racist if you say that people shouldn't be judged by their skin if they're white. That's all I said. Nothing in this conversation, implied that I thought that black people were inferior. Nothing in this conversation implied, that I disliked black people or, had any kind of preconceived notions about black people, which are the things in the, the actual definition of racism that we talked about earlier. Okay. Nothing like that. But I'm racist because of the fact that I came to that conclusion, that I said, hey, what you're doing is wrong. Earlier this month, a comedian named Paul Mooney passed away on May 19th. Mr. Mooney basically had a long history of controversial comedy that usually kind of revolved around making disparaging comments about white people, the comments that are supposedly not racist.
I can't be racist by definition. Look that up in the white folks dictionary. How can I be racist?
Well, I couldn't find the white folks dictionary, so I guess we're going to have to settle for the real dictionary. But let's go ahead and get into this again. Racism. A belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. Also, behavior or attitudes that reflect and foster this belief, racial discrimination or prejudice. Now, this is interesting because a lot of the people who say that black people can't be racist do say that black people can be prejudiced, but the definition of racism makes it clear that being racially prejudiced is still racism. The systemic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic, and political advantage of another, a political or social system founded on racism and designed to execute its principles. So that's the actual definition in the dictionary that he suggested that we look it up in. But let's see, because he elaborates a little bit on his own criteria for racism.
I've never told anyone where to live. I've never told anyone what kind of jobs to have. I've never kept anyone from going to a school, out of a restaurant, or drinking from a fountain. I've never lynched anybody. So how can I be racist? How can I be racist? By definition, I can't be racist.
All right, so let's go down this checklist that Mr. Mooney put together to ensure that even I myself could not possibly be racist, because I've never told anyone where they can live, check, what kind of job they can have, check. Nor have I ever prevented anybody from going to a school, check. Going to a restaurant, check. Using a drinking fountain, check. And I've never lynched anybody. Therefore, I cannot be racist.
I think what's happening is
How can the slave be the master? That doesn't even make sense. I mean, that's someone that's telling you this or making that statement, whether they're black or white. They have to be totally insane. I can't be, by definition. Look up the definition of racism.
Well, let's go back to it. Because before I wasn't sure, but now that I've read his checklist, I know for sure. Actually, I think what he was probably getting at was to suggest that he can't be racist because he doesn't have the power to do any of those things. But once again, we're going back to what he said. Look up the definition of racism, and here we have it. Not only is his criteria not in here, the suggestion that people have to have the power to do any of those things to be racist is also not in here, because that's not the definition of racism. Thanks for listening. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed tonight's stream. If you haven't already, please smash the like button. And thank you guys for tuning in today. You've been listening to V Radio, the Bob Ross of activist journalism. Today, we took our midnight black and mixed it together to paint this black canvas. And on it, we took our liquid white and we drew out these letters. These letters that say, Black Lives Matter, expose on the BLM cash enterprise. I hope you've enjoyed this broadcast. I know I've enjoyed it. I mean, I didn't enjoy it in any kind of, inappropriate way, but I made love to your minds. Yeah. So from Twitch, has anybody ever told me that I have a great face for radio? My face is a Guy Fawkes mask. What are you talking about? Let's take a look at the chat. Anybody have any questions about anything that they've saw today? Agrovixen, I just finished my shower. Yeah, I'm still on. And look at that, you're damp. No, not that I can actually see that you're damp or anything, but yeah. Well, Truth, if you feel dirty, then you should also take a shower. Just saying, brah. Yeah. Oh, boy. So I'm working on some guests. I'm still looking into getting Grambo, meaning the nice older woman who testified on behalf of Kyle Rittenhouse. And she said she's going to bring the guy that is known as Fuck Around and Find Out guy, because he's the angry guy that put out the fire in the dumpster fire the second time around and screamed at the protesters. And there's going to be one other guy who was on the roof during the Kenosha riots. He's going to be on. I guess the three of them are going to sit together in one room, and I'll be interviewing all three of them on my channel. I'm also reaching out to Brett Weinstein. Who else? CJTV has talked about possibly having me on. We're still working that out. I don't know. We'll see. And I do want you guys make sure you go to my featured channels where you can check out some of the channels that I suggest, which would be Logical Checkmate, Johnny Walker Dread, Neo Unrealist, Adam Friended, just some other great channels you guys can check out. In addition to, of course, the Strategic Eyes channel, one of my very favorites. And if you guys have any guests that you'd like me to look into, I'll do my best. I used to be a lot better at it back in the day. But, in addition to that, if there are any topics you'd like me to do, let me know. I've had a lot of people asking me where they can find my stuff. So, as far as my other platforms and such, make sure that you go to my Linktree website, which I'll show you what it looks like. Uno momento, por favor. And this will show you how to get to, everything. You'll be able to go here, find everything you keep asking about. This is what it looks like. You can go to v-radio.us and it should redirect here. If it doesn't, then you can find the direct link on a lot of the descriptions of a lot of my videos. But you can support me on PayPal, Patreon, or Subscribestar. This has got my YouTube channel, Twitch channel, Rumble channel. This podcast will take you to Anchor. There's a lot of different places you can listen to my podcast. I'm also on BitChute. I have a Telegram group. And this is my Fans of V Radio Facebook group. This is my Discord. You can also add me as a friend on Facebook. I accept friend requests. You got me on Twitter and my blog. Now, the reason I suggest you actually use this link to get to Twitter is that people who've searched for me there cannot find me. People have also had problems finding me by searching me on any of these other mediums, and I'm pretty confident that I'm likely shadow banned because YouTube basically considers my sexy, sultry voice as a serious threat. And they should, because I'll take all their ladies. Oh, yeah. Agrovixen says, why has MIL said that Asians are racist? I don't know. It's entirely possible. I mean, it's not. What that was really about was the reason I made that video was not to say that like it's only blacks that are capable of being racist towards Asians. It was more just about that they were lying about it at the time, underplaying it. It was another one of those Waukesha massacre situations where they just kind of hide the race of the person involved. And, for sure. Jaden Smith, I don't know. He might have encountered some of that when he was over there. So again, I'm not neglecting the possibility that Asian people might also be racist too. Probably not a pressing issue, but why does every single advertisement without fail feature a black woman? I think they're trying to appear to be more diverse. Uh-oh, my girls are responding. What we got here? Oh my. That's right. Girls know what's up. I'll start talking to you in that sexy voice. And I can make girls laugh too. Chicks dig that. Do I have more videos on critical race theory? I absolutely do. I have a fantastic video on critical race theory I can show you. And my God, is it ever going to make you angry? Because I got a video from The Root. The Root is literally a black network. It's like BET on YouTube. And they brought on, oh God, what was her name? Basically, she's a professor of like a bunch of different woke studies at Rutgers. And they discuss critical race theory for like 45 minutes. And my God, was it ever racist? Truth, you want to watch it now? God, you guys are so spoiled. I guess I can throw that on. If you guys, if you can't stay for this, and that's fine. I'm not going to ask you to, but it'll be a good way to assess just to end this one. But in any case, thank you, ladies, for tuning in. Don't get me wrong, though. As much as I like to play around, my days of being a ladies' man are behind me. CRT video. Yeah, I remember Tiffany. You're like, Jesus, I just want to punch this lady. Yeah, she's obnoxious. It's a good one to schedule. Oh, okay, not today. All right, then that's fine. Does V Radio have an OnlyFans? Uh-oh, somebody wants to see the spider video. All right, that's pretty short, and that'd be a good way to stop. So, thank you, THX. I hope you've considered to support me on Patreon. Smash the like button, you guys, on your way out, and I'll play this funny spider video for you as you leave. For those of you who are not familiar with the Spiders on Drugs episode, they did a critical study on the effects of drugs on spiders. This information, I think, is important and really should be shared because of the dangers of drugs that are often not spoken about. But once you've watched this video, you'll be prepared to discuss the true dangers of drugs.
The wood spider is the most accomplished of all web-building species. Recently, Scientists gave these tiny creatures a variety of psychoactive drugs to observe their effects on web building. When given a minute dose of LSD, the spider's web took on an unfamiliar, minimalist structure. When given caffeine, the web structure was not affected, but the spider's behavior was. Given THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, the spider didn't build a web. It built a hammock, where it lay all day and watched the caffeine spider go. When given alcohol, the spider built a web, found a mate, and raised over 100 young. But the mate got a restraining order, and now the spider can't go within 100 centimeters of the web. The crack cocaine spider figured building webs was for suckers, waited till the caffeine spider was exhausted, then came up behind it and popped a cap in its ass. Nice web, Mr. Crack Spider. When winter came, the marijuana spider had no place to live. It ended up in the crack web as the crack spider's bitch. For more information on the crack spider's bitch, contact the Canadian Wildlife Service in Ottawa.
The moral of the story is, don't do drugs, kids. You don't want to end up like the crack spider's bitch. Dun dun dun! Yeah, you guys who missed the beginning of the stream, you can also now watch my stream intro. Created a new intro that's just a series of memes with V's music, of which I found a basically a Creative Commons version of the Overture song that he uses. The reason I play the stream intro is because of the fact that it takes a while for you guys to all gather up and make your way over here. I gotta find another trial or something to cover for you guys. Unfortunately, the ones that I'd like to cover, they don't have cameras in the courtroom. I've been told that may change, so we'll see. If it comes to that, I know you guys enjoyed hanging out with me covering trials, and we'll see what's up. I think like the trial for that officer who accidentally pulled her pistol instead of her taser. Oh my goodness, that was like terrible. God, I would freaking love it if we could have been in the room for the Epstein trial. I know, but you're not allowed to do federal stuff with cameras apparently. So, and thank you guys for tuning in today. Oh yeah, the Jussie Smollett one it's not being videotaped either. I would have totally loved that. Me and Neo and Realist were just salivating at the idea of covering that one together. And holy crap, but to those of you who got here late, I definitely did a great expose and exposed specifically how much ridiculous money these people made doing this Black Lives Matter movement thing. Suckers. Yep. The crack cocaine spider figured building webs was for suckers. I love that video. And thanks everybody for tuning in, guys. Thanks for the people tuning in on YouTube and on Twitch. I was also on Facebook today. I have no idea if anybody watched. The reason I stopped going and doing stuff on Rumble for streams is that what happens is that the YouTube streams automatically get uploaded to Rumble. So what was happening is it was creating doubles of everything. And for some reason, I can't seem to delete videos off of my Rumble. So, but do please make sure you head over to my website and sign up for my various platforms, because once I got banned for a week from YouTube, that sucked, because I got 600 subscribers just during the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Would have been nice, and you guys, you can also support me by going to Twitch now. That'll help me out. I'm trying to get all the final criteria together to be able to enable subscriptions on Twitch. But also join my social media, because one of the things that I struggled with when I was banned for a week was I couldn't talk to any of you and just tell you guys that I went over to Neo and Realist stream, and you could have hung out over there with us. So, all right, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you, and God bless, as Bob Ross would have said. And all you ladies, when you slide into bed tonight and pull the blankets up, you can think about this beautiful voice whispering in your ear. Have a good night.